I woke up feeling like I was drowning in lava, burning hot, unable to move, barely able to think. The last thing I remembered was headlights from a truck rushing at me while I waited at a traffic light. My whole life flashed before my eyes. School, graduation, working as a game designer at some small company. Nothing special. Then everything went dark. But I didn't die. Well, not exactly. My body felt impossibly heavy, like I'd turned into a giant. Strange memories started flowing into my mind. Not mine, but somehow familiar, like they'd always been there. I learned about a world called the Orid Continent, full of magic, gods, and different races. Ages ago, a powerful dragon lord named Kuin got greedy, touched the power of ancient outer gods, and turned into a world-destroying demon dragon. He conquered the demon realm, corrupted the land, and waged war on everything alive. The gods finally stepped in, gave 8 divine weapons to 8 chosen heroes, and after 100 years of fighting, they defeated the dragon. They chained him up with those divine weapons and sealed him away in a forgotten place called the Rift Abyss. And now, I was that dragon. Great news. I was one of the most powerful beings ever. Terrible news. I was completely chained up with no way out. I tried to struggle. At first, I couldn't even twitch a finger, but I kept pushing and heard cracking sounds. Rocks broke, chains rattled. Eventually, I could move my head, legs, and tail, though my wings were still pinned. I managed to scrape my eyes open against the cave walls and saw everything glowing red. I was literally sitting in a pool of magma. Chains covered in magical runes wrapped around my body, some of them piercing straight through my flesh and into my bones. I tried everything, biting the chains, blasting my dragon breath, clawing at them. Nothing worked. The chains made from divine weapons were still too strong. I was stuck. Then I remembered something important. The original dragon had 13 powerful generals, fanatical followers who each carried a magical artifact he'd given them. I could contact them through those artifacts. The seals on the chains had weakened over time. They could still hold me down physically, but the mechanisms blocking my magic were falling apart. I cast the spell. It worked. My consciousness reached out and connected to one of those artifacts, except it wasn't in the hands of some loyal demon general. It was sitting on a display shelf in a museum, in a kingdom called Blue Crystal, in a city called Sky Capital. A young woman named Rosalind, a Holy Knight commander, had just picked it up as a birthday gift for her father. The artifact activated. Her mind got pulled into a vision where she saw my enormous, terrifying dragon head floating among stars. I opened my mouth to deliver a grand speech to rally my generals, and immediately spotted the holy light radiating off her. My strong and loyal demon generals, I am about to return. What the hell? Holy light? I expected to see my loyal demon generals, or at least their descendants. Instead, standing before me was a holy light follower. A knight, no less. It was like a criminal setting up a secret meeting and accidentally inviting a cop. My first instinct was to cut the connection immediately, but I quickly realized that in my current sealed state, if I broke this spell, I'd have to wait days before I could use it again. Besides, I was the world-destroying demon dragon. Why should I be scared of one little holy knight? So I calmed down and looked at her properly. She was a tall, good-looking blonde woman in expensive-looking armor with a griffin emblem on the chest. What surprised me was that she wasn't panicked at all. She just looked around curiously, like this was mildly interesting to her. I tried to speak, but she cut me off immediately. So, are you going to turn yourself in? Or do I have to come arrest you? I had no idea what she was talking about. She sighed and explained that apparently there was a well-known scam in this world where fraudsters pretend to be ancient powerful beings, pull rich people into magical visions, and trick them out of money or worse. The church had been cracking down on it for years. She thought I was a con artist. She told me to drop the act and release her, warning that the church would find her soon and I'd be in serious trouble. I told her I wasn't a scammer. She didn't care. She pulled out her knight's sword and started praying to the holy light, trying to break free from this mental space. Her body glowed bright for a moment, then faded. It didn't work. She tried again, failed again. She even used some kind of amber crystal pendant. Still nothing. She finally pointed her sword at me and demanded to know what I'd done. I floated my dragon head to the side and asked, "Is there any chance I'm actually not a scammer?" She crossed her arms stubbornly and insisted the church would rescue her soon and I'd pay for this. Fine. I didn't have time for this. I muted her, literally used my power to block her voice, and started casting the summoning spell again to find the next artifact holder. I couldn't kick her out because in my weakened state, that might break the whole spell. So I just treated her like she wasn't there. She didn't realize she'd been muted and kept yelling warnings at me, even tried to charge at me, but hit an invisible wall. A new figure appeared. Not a demon either. It was a tall, serious-looking man in leather armor carrying a massive broadsword on his back. He looked around coldly, then stared at my giant dragon head without saying a word. I blinked. I was starting to accept the painful truth. My demon generals were probably all gone. Maybe dead. If that was the case, I'd have to recruit these new artifact holders as my helpers instead. I hoped this guy would be more reasonable than the Night Lady. Then he spoke, his voice low and threatening. Send me back. Now. Before I get angry, my eye twitched. Do you even know who you're talking to? I won't repeat myself. This is your last chance. I pursed my dragon lips and spat a small fireball at him, like spitting out a piece of gum. It engulfed him instantly. His flesh and bones burned to ash in under 10 seconds. He didn't even scream, just gritted his teeth and tried to save himself, but it was too fast. The ashes vanished, and his ghostly form reappeared. He collapsed on the ground, gasping like a drowning man who'd just been pulled from water. Off to the side, the Night Lady's eyes went wide. This was just a mental space. I couldn't actually kill anyone here in reality, but I could definitely make them feel pain. And that arrogant swordsman deserved a lesson. After I burned him alive and he reformed, the guy was gasping on the ground. There was rage in his eyes, but mostly fear. The fire I'd hit him with wasn't ordinary. It carried a corrupting whisper that attacked the mind along with the body. The pain was completely real, maybe even worse than actually dying. He stayed quiet after that, still stubborn, but at least he shut up. I could tell he wouldn't be easy to tame, so I decided not to waste energy on him yet. I tossed him over to where the Night Lady was and kept summoning. The Knight actually thought the whole burning thing was staged, like the swordsman and I were partners putting on a show to intimidate her. If I'd known what she was thinking, I would have given her a taste of the fire too. Next person appeared, a bald old man in a worn-out alchemist robe with a monocle on one eye. He took one look around and immediately said, "Nice spell you got here, buddy. Shame to waste it on scamming people." I wanted to scream. The old man kept going, telling me he used to run scams like this himself before he got caught and did jail time. He even offered to teach me better ways to make money. I didn't even bother talking, just tossed him into the reject pile with the others. Next summon, a tiny girl appeared. Pink curly hair, doll-like face, big round eyes, puffy princess dress with flowers on it. Maybe 7 or 8 years old. She looked up at my enormous dragon head and squealed. Wow, a big dragon, cute, but completely useless. I sent her over to the others. The knight immediately scooped her up protectively. After that, no more summons worked. The remaining artifacts either had no owners or were destroyed. So I looked at my lineup. A holy knight who thought I was a criminal, a stubborn swordsman who wanted to kill me, a bald ex-con artist, and a little girl. What kind of pathetic team was this? I asked anyway, who wants to follow me? I can grant any wish you desire. The little girl's hand shot up immediately. Me. The knight pushed her hand down and whispered, "He's a scammer, sweetie. Don't believe him, but he's a big dragon. Big dragons are evil, but be good. I'll take you home soon." I ignored the kid. I needed a powerful warrior who could collect the divine weapons and break my seal. The knight was from the enemy faction, no chance. The old man was too old. That left the swordsman. Difficult, but my only real option. I decided to properly introduce myself. Let me be clear, I'm not a scammer. I am a mighty demon dragon, the legendary being with the power to destroy the world. Hold on, buddy, the old man interrupted. You said you're a demon dragon? You mean Sakner? Sakner? Who the hell is that? My name is Kuin, the world-ending calamity. The old man shook his head. Buddy, do you live under a rock? Everyone on the continent knows there's only one demon dragon, Sakner, the Demon King's mount. He was badly wounded by heroes and disappeared. And he doesn't look like you. Your design is cooler, I'll give you that, but you're definitely not the demon dragon. I was speechless. Had history been completely rewritten? The records of me, the actual world-destroying demon dragon, had just vanished? I took a deep breath and told the old man I didn't know any Sakner or any Demon King. Whoever they were, They came after me, small fry. I was the oldest, strongest, and only world-destroying dragon. The old man just shrugged and said my fake backstory was too unbelievable, even for a scam. I really wanted to blast him with some eldritch whispers to prove my point, but I had to save my energy. It didn't matter anyway. Unless I showed solid proof, none of the three adults would believe me. I decided to gather some information first. Are the heroes still alive in this era? The old man answered that heroes still existed, but they'd gone through who knows how many generations by now. Then the little girl struggled free from the knight's arms, raised her hand eagerly, and announced, "My grandpa is a hero." Everyone froze, me included. I immediately shoved all three adults aside behind a barrier and leaned my massive eye close to the little girl. I made my voice as soft and gentle as I could manage. "Sweetie, did you just say your grandpa is a hero?" She nodded hard. "My grandpa is the greatest hero ever. Does he have a legendary divine weapon? Something he always carries? Maybe a sword, a book, a staff?" "Yes," she nodded again. My heart was pounding. "Does your grandpa let you play with it?" Her cheerful face suddenly went sad. "Grandpa and Grandma and Mom and Dad don't spend much time with me. Only Uncle Luncter plays with me sometimes. How terrible. How could they leave such an adorable little angel alone?" I said, acting outraged on her behalf. Meanwhile, behind the barrier, the night lady was pounding on the invisible wall screaming about me being a scammer who tricks children. The swordsman just sat with his eyes closed, and the old man was studying the mental space like it was a science experiment. After comforting the girl a bit, I got back to my real question. What does your grandpa's divine weapon look like? It's a really thick book. When I draw pictures in it, they come alive. It's super fun. The World Book, one of the 8 divine weapons. And then she casually mentioned she'd played with it yesterday, twice, and once this morning. It's near you right now? Yep. It's right by my pillow. Grandpa said he doesn't need it anymore, so he gave it to me as a toy. I was so stunned I couldn't move. "Big dragon?" She stared at me, confused. I snapped out of it. "What's your name, sweetie?" "Amira." "Amira Falora. Nice to meet you, Amira. We're best friends now. My name is Kuin, the world-ending calamity." I formed a small ghostly hand in front of her, and she grabbed it with both of her tiny hands, shaking it excitedly. "Yay, best friends. As your best friend, could you do me a small favor? When you go back, open the book to the last page. There's a long spell there. Then read this spell I'm about to teach you. One divine weapon alone couldn't fully break my seal, but it could loosen some of my restrictions. That's all I needed for now. The weapon didn't require a hero to use. Anyone could activate a small portion of its power. And what I was asking Amira to do didn't even need magic skill, just opening the right page and reading a spell. She had an amazing memory and seemed naturally talented with magic. After just a few tries, she could recite the complicated spell perfectly. "You're amazing, Amira. Please don't forget to help me when you get back. That's our promise, right?" Amira always keeps her promises. "One more thing. Don't tell anyone about me, okay? I'm a dragon, after all. Why not? My Uncle Luncter is a dragon too, and everyone likes him, so that's why she wasn't scared of me. She was used to being around dragons." I thought fast. If you tell other people, they won't let you see me again. They'll think I'm a bad guy, because they can't meet me like you can. Only you and those people over there can see me. "Oh, I see," she said thoughtfully. "As your friend, I want to give you a gift. Hold out your hand." She held out her right hand. I focused, and an ancient rune appeared on her palm, then sank into her skin. "This magic makes you immune to all fire. When you're in danger, you can use this hand to summon a fire spirit to protect you. You can also play with it." "Wow, I love this gift." She held her hand to her chest, beaming. "Time for us to say goodbye. We'll meet again in a few days, Amira." "You're leaving?" "Yes, but we'll see each other soon. Remember our promise." The mental space began to fade, and all 4 of them drifted back to reality. The mental space faded, and everyone went back to their own lives. I couldn't see what happened next, but I could piece things together later. Back in the museum, Rosalind snapped awake. The museum owner told her she'd only spaced out for about 10 seconds, even though she'd spent over an hour inside my mental space. She immediately recognized the bracelet as a magical tool and assumed it was part of a scam operation. Worse, she was furious about what I might have told the little girl. She rushed out of the museum without even getting a gift box, heading straight to her church to report everything. In a place called Yato City, a lawless dump full of criminals, dead bodies in the streets, and factories choking the sky with smoke, the swordsman Leon stood in his room holding the artifact that had pulled him into my space. It was an old disc covered in worn-out markings. He'd been about to leave for a job worth 10,000 gold coins when the thing started glowing. After getting back to reality, he just stared at it for a moment, then tossed it into a trash pile in the corner and walked out the door. Great. Very helpful. The bald old man lived in a place called the Storm Desert, a land of permanent dark clouds, constant lightning, and almost no rain. He had a little alchemy hut powered by lightning strikes. He was sitting at his workbench, poking at the artifact, a stick about the length of a forearm, trying to figure out how my magic worked. He genuinely thought my technique was impressive, even if he still believed I was a fellow con artist. He kept muttering about not being able to find the magic port, but the one who mattered most was Amira. She was in a cute, fancy room inside a castle called White Rainbow Keep, in a place called the Phantom Dragon Forest. When she came back to reality, she was sitting on her pink bed, holding a little dog-shaped statue, the artifact. She rolled around on the bed happily, saying my name. As a hero's descendant, she'd seen plenty of magical things, so meeting a giant dragon in a mental space was just a fun adventure to her. Then she remembered our promise. She jumped off the bed and found a thick brown book lying on the floor by the wall. Its cover had a world tree drawn in 7 colors. This was the divine weapon, the world book. She'd accidentally kicked it off the bed while sleeping. Sorry, Grofy, she said to the book. She'd given it a name. The book could talk back. Words appeared on its blank pages. It's okay. But Amira kicks her blankets off in her sleep. That's a bad habit. You'll catch a cold. She blushed and promised to be careful. Here's something important I learned. The divine weapons weren't the originals anymore. Over the ages, even weapons made by gods wore down and cracked. Since the gods never came back, mortals had to rebuild them, generation after generation. Each new version was weaker than the last, but they were still the most powerful items in the world. The world book itself didn't even know what the last page was for, only that the previous version of the book had insisted it be kept, because the version before that had insisted the same thing. That last page was different from all the others, yellow and rough-edged, like it didn't belong. And on it was a long spell written in an ancient, unknown language. Amira took a deep breath, recalled the spell I'd taught her, and began to read it out loud. Nothing dramatic happened when Amira read the spell. No explosions, no flashing lights. But the moment she finished, the last page of the world book started fluttering on its own. It crumbled apart piece by piece, the fragments burning up in the air until nothing was left. Amira just stared. She hadn't expected that at all. The poor kid had only ever known the good side of the world, kindness, trust, warmth. She had no real friends her own age, just castle maids, forest animals, and a silver dragon uncle named Luncter. She'd never been tricked before, so the idea that I might have deceived her barely crossed her mind. Even now, she thought maybe I didn't mean any harm, and she could just ask me about it next time. The world book asked her what she'd done. She stuttered but refused to give me up, remembering I'd told her to keep my existence secret. The book didn't push too hard. It told her the page had been close to falling apart on its own anyway, maybe another century or 2 at most, and that it was better to deal with whatever consequences came now while a young hero was still around. Apparently, out of 8 divine weapons, only 3 still had owners. Amira's elderly grandfather, who was off traveling with his wife and too old to fight properly. 1 hero in his prime at peak strength, and 1 rookie who'd just recently been chosen. The other 5 weapons had been ownerless since their previous holders died. Deep underground, in my prison, I felt the change the instant it happened. Several chains lost their power, and I snapped them immediately. A portion of my strength came back. I could now spread my senses outward and even affect reality in a limited area around me. Yes, Amira, you little angel. You're officially my #1 general. I thrashed around in the magma with excitement, which unfortunately caused earthquakes on the surface. Turns out, the place above me had changed completely. What used to be a sealed rift was now called the Eternal Night Forest, a massive adventurer's paradise covered by permanent dark purple clouds. The whole area was crawling with monsters born from my body's radiation over the ages. Adventurers had built stations everywhere and made careers out of hunting these creatures. They could go down several underground levels, but nobody dared go too deep because of the mental corruption down there. My corruption, which was strong enough to threaten even heroes. The earthquake I caused caught some attention from the Adventurer Guild's leadership, but most people shrugged it off. Then a second, stronger quake hit, and the monsters started howling in fear. That was harder to ignore. I pushed my senses as far as they could reach and found all kinds of twisted plants, deformed creatures, and magic-rich mineral crystals. All things my sealed body had created over the ages just by existing. I couldn't reach the surface yet, but I could work with what was nearby. I needed loyal servants. The creatures around me were all mindless, running on pure instinct. Useless as they were. But I could fix that. I picked out a bat-like flying monster about the size of a young dragon. It was a mess. 5 limbs arranged unevenly, a head that looked like 2 skulls half-merged together, and mismatched wings that made it fly crooked. Strong enough, but too stupid to fight properly. I locked it in place with my power and went to work. I reshaped its flesh and bone, removed the extra limbs, covered exposed muscle with proper skin and scales, and sculpted the head into something that actually looked like a dragon. When I was done, a brand new creature stood there, purple-skinned, 2-legged, long-necked, with fangs and sharp hawk-like eyes. And most importantly, it had intelligence now. I projected a ghostly image of my dragon head in front of it. The moment it saw me, it felt something deep and absolute, an unquestionable authority built into its very being. It dropped to the ground immediately, bowing. My first servant. I admired my creation for a moment. Not bad at all. Can you understand me? I asked, speaking out loud in the continent's common language. I'd picked it up instantly when I pulled the knight into my mental space. One of the perks of being an ancient dragon. Just by making contact with someone's consciousness, I could absorb their language completely. The fake dragon nodded. Good. Go up to the surface, explore everything you can, and come back in 3 days. As my creation, I could directly access its memories. Basically a living camera. I needed it to scout the outside world for me. Oh, and your name is Purple Wing now. Go. Purple Wing bowed respectfully, spread its wings, and flew straight up toward the ceiling. Then it smashed head first into the rock layer above and got its head stuck. I stared in silence. It had intelligence now, sure, but apparently not much. After struggling free, it hung from the ceiling and started digging with its claws. I floated my ghostly dragon head up next to it. You know your breath attack would be faster, right? It paused, looked at me, looked at the tiny hole it had scratched out, and seemed to slowly process what I meant. Then it opened its mouth and unleashed a blast of purple flame. Since its energy came from me, it had basically unlimited power as long as it stayed within my range. The fire blasted through the rock in under 30 minutes. I peeked through the new tunnel. Couldn't see anything useful, just darkness and glowing embers on the walls. My senses couldn't reach any further. What are you waiting for? Get moving. Purple Wing squeezed into the tunnel and disappeared into the dark. Now all I could do was wait. Meanwhile, things were happening on the surface that I didn't know about yet. Rosalind had gone straight to the church in Sky Capital and brought the bracelet artifact to an old priest named Brody. He examined it and confirmed it was genuinely ancient, but the magic inside was so fragile that any attempt to trace its source would probably destroy it completely. He offered to try anyway, but admitted the chances were almost zero. Rosalind decided not to risk it. The bracelet was her only lead to finding me. She still thought I was a scammer, and destroying it meant losing that connection forever. Instead, she decided to go find Amira directly. With the clue that the girl was a hero's granddaughter, it wasn't hard to narrow down who she was. There were only 3 living heroes, and only one fit the description. The elderly owner of the World Book, whose descendants lived in the Phantom Dragon Forest under the protection of forest elves and silver dragons. The problem was access. The girl was basically royalty in that forest. Rosalind was a duke's daughter, which was impressive, but not impressive enough to just walk in and demand to see the child. Then it hit her, the princess. Rosalind knew the princess of the Blue Crystal Kingdom personally, and they were on good terms. This princess was the king's most beloved daughter, known as the kingdom's most beautiful violet, and she was the top student of the Sword Saint. If anyone could get Rosalind an audience in the Phantom Dragon Forest, It was her. With a plan forming, Rosalind's expression finally relaxed a little. She just hoped she wasn't too late, that the innocent little girl hadn't already done something irreversible because of what the scammer had told her. While I waited for Purple Wing to return, things were happening in the world above that I'd only learn about later. Rosalind ran into a friend at the church, a brown-haired nun named Alina who'd looked after her when she first joined. Alina tried to chat, but Rosalind was in too much of a hurry and rushed off. She had a mission: find Amira before the scammer could do more damage. Over in the Phantom Dragon Forest, Amira was having a singing lesson. Not ordinary singing. Ancient elven songs that could channel magic, giving pain to demons and strength to allies on a battlefield. Her teacher, an elf woman in a white dress and flower crown, was amazed at how well the little girl performed. Apparently, Amira had shown talent for these songs since she was a baby, which was nearly unheard of for a human. The forest elves were so impressed that they'd basically decided she would be their future queen. Their old royal family had been corrupt cowards who abandoned their people during a crisis. The current hero, Amira's grandfather, had saved them, but he belonged to the whole continent, not just the elves. Amira, with her kind heart and rare gift, seemed like a sign from nature itself. All the elves agreed on this. After her lesson, Amira hurried back to her room, locked the door, and held out her right hand. A fireball formed and turned into a round little fire spirit, the gift I'd given her. She'd already named it Anseros. "Let's keep playing the game from yesterday," she told it. The fire spirit nodded. She pulled a box of dolls from under her bed and set up her favorite game: Heroes versus the Demon King. She played the hero side with her pretty dolls, while the fire spirit controlled the ugly ones as the demon army. The spirit was smart and completely loyal to her, and its flames wouldn't burn anything it touched, making it the perfect playmate. Since getting the fire spirit, she'd been so busy playing that the world book had been forgotten in the corner. Kids are simple like that. Simple fun, simple happiness. Meanwhile, underground, Purple Wing was doing its job. It had made it up to the 13th underground level of what the surface people called the Eternal Night Forest. Every monster it passed cowered in fear, not because Purple Wing was especially scary looking, but because it reeked of deep-layer corruption. These creatures had an instinct coded into their genes after countless generations. The stronger the corruption smell, the higher the rank. Purple Wing was basically walking around with VIP status. It had been exploring for 2 days. The first underground space was small and took half a day. The second was much bigger. Almost a day and a half wasn't enough to cover it all. But 3 days was the deadline I'd given, and Purple Wing followed orders. When I sensed it coming back, I woke up immediately. There wasn't much else to do down here besides sleep. I projected my dragon head in front of Purple Wing and dove straight into its memories. After reviewing everything, I had a decent picture of what was above me. My prison had developed into a massive underground dungeon, layer after layer of caverns stacked on top of each other, getting bigger the higher you went. Monsters filled every level, warped by my radiation. The closer they were to the bottom, the stronger they got, but also more deformed and mindless. A pretty unusual underground city, I thought. Even though freedom was still far off, I'd already started thinking about what to do once I got out. Go back to being an evil tyrant spreading terror? Absolutely not. I'd just get sealed again, and honestly, that was never who I really was. I'm Zhou Miao at my core. All I want is a peaceful, worry-free life. As long as I have the strength to protect myself and nobody comes looking for trouble, that's enough. The original dragon got crushed by the gods for being too ambitious. I wasn't about to make that mistake. So I sent Purple Wing back out with new instructions. Don't explore every corner this time. Just get a general look at each layer. Go all the way to the surface, check the surroundings, and come back quietly. Avoid smart creatures, avoid fights. Stay low-key. Purple Wing took off, blasting through layers with its breath attack instead of wasting time looking for natural passages. From its memories afterward, I pieced together the whole underground structure. 14 layers total above my prison, shaped like an upside-down triangle. Bigger spaces the higher you go. Layer 8 was where things got interesting. There were groups of corrupted pig people, squat and lumpy with rocks embedded in their skin, wearing crude clothes and using tools. They'd survived down there with strong mental resistance, keeping some of their minds intact. Some of them actually tried to attack Purple Wing as it flew overhead, but it was way too fast. There were also corrupted lizard people, lion-bodied humanoids, and undead creatures, though most of those had lost all intelligence. A few solo monsters were terrifyingly powerful. One massive red creature covered in horn-like spikes sat on a mountain of bones and actually seemed to think when it saw Purple Wing. These giant loners each controlled huge territories that nobody dared challenge. Layer 7 got rougher. More intelligent groups, more powerful individuals. Purple Wing got attacked multiple times crossing through territories. Some flying creatures were just as fast as it was and chased it down, trying to eat it for the concentrated corruption in its body. They thought devouring Purple Wing would let them go deeper underground and grow stronger. They didn't know Purple Wing was special, handmade by me, the source of all that corruption. Eating it wouldn't give them anything. Purple Wing escaped by burning through its unlimited energy supply, blasting pursuers with endless purple flames until they gave up. Layer 6 evened out. Monsters around Purple Wing's level, more intelligent species, and even traces of human adventurers. Layer 5 was busy, with monsters fighting over territory everywhere and adventurer squads guarding specific entrances. Layers 4 and 3 were similar. Then finally, the surface. Purple Wing punched through the ground with its breath, climbed out, and for the first time in its existence breathed fresh air. It didn't enjoy it much. It also felt its power slowly draining. Too far from me, the signal was weak. But it did its job, flew around, scanned the area, and dove back underground through the same hole. Minutes later, a squad of armored guild guards crept up to the smoking hole and stared down into it, pale-faced. The blast had come dangerously close to a nearby adventurer station. If the aim had been slightly off, they'd all be ashes. Back at the bottom, I looked at Purple Wing. It was covered in wounds. Someone beat you up? It nodded, then shook its head. I realized asking was pointless when I could just check its memories directly. The injuries came from Layer 7. Several powerful monsters had ambushed it on the way back. If it hadn't been so fast, I would have lost my only servant. My eyes narrowed. Those creatures dared to touch what was mine. No respect at all. It was time to let everyone underground know who the real boss was down here. Purple Wing getting beaten up was a wake-up call. I'd assumed everything above me was just mindless beasts made strong by my radiation. I was wrong. The creatures on Layer 8 weren't just pollution-powered. They were genuinely powerful on their own. My corruption only made them stronger. Some of them could destroy entire human cities with a wave of their hand, on par with the weaker elemental lords from my memories. If any of them had seriously gone after Purple Wing, it wouldn't have survived. But the way I saw it, this whole underground existed because of me. My body created it. My energy fed it. These creatures had been squatting on my property rent-free for who knows how long. Time to collect. I gave Purple Wing a message to deliver and sent it back up. One of the Layer 8 lords was a creature called Ulerin, a massive demon covered in horns, sitting on a pile of bones. Turns out it was actually a former demon general from a past Demon King's army, one who'd fled here after being defeated by heroes long ago. It carried around its dead friend's skull and talked to it like a companion. It had lived down here for ages, growing stronger from my energy but too scared of heroes to ever return to the surface. It just slept and ate and dreamed of being a world conqueror in its sleep. When Purple Wing landed in front of Ulerin, it didn't speak. It couldn't talk well yet. Instead, it spat out a glowing pearl that projected a massive image of my dragon head, filling the entire space. The moment Ulerin saw it, its eyes stung, and every instinct screamed that looking directly at me was forbidden. Even real demon kings had never given it this kind of pressure. I delivered my speech through the projection. You insects squatting on my land. Listen carefully. The ground you stand on, the power you use to grow strong, all of it belongs to me. You occupied my territory while I slept, an unforgivable crime. But since you didn't know better, I'll show mercy. Swear absolute loyalty, become my servants, and pay back what you've stolen. Refuse, and endless torment will be your fate. This purple creature is my personal servant and messenger. Disrespect it, and you disrespect me. The projection faded. Purple Wing grabbed the pearl and flew off without waiting for a response. That deliberate arrogance was part of the plan. Acting like I didn't care about their answer made it feel more real. Purple Wing visited every powerful lord on the 8th floor, playing the same message each time. Most were suspicious but didn't dare attack. A few hotheads, though, refused to bow and lashed out. I'd planned for that. I'd carved dragon runes into Purple Wing's body beforehand. If anyone attacked it, the runes would activate automatically, rip the attacker's soul out, and trap it inside. When Purple Wing brought those souls back to me, I crushed them over and over, letting them experience the kind of agony that erases all stubbornness. These creatures only grew strong because of my energy. Dealing with them was easy, even in my weakened state. They were parasites feeding off my power. Of course I could control them. After Purple Wing left the 8th floor, the remaining lords went to check on the ones who'd attacked. They found their bodies still standing, completely empty. Soulless husks. Whatever doubts they'd had vanished instantly. Back at the bottom, I released the 3 captured souls from the ruins. The moment they saw my floating dragon head, they dropped flat and begged for forgiveness. I looked them over. All 3 were demons. A pit worm called West Viper Fong, a vampiress called Samantha Thornrose, and a great horn demon called Quake Lavroar. Each was king level in their respective demon clans, powerful enough to be lords in hell itself. I didn't feel any guilt about what I did next. These were demons. No moral complications there. You attacked my servant. That means you've committed a crime against me. As punishment, your souls now belong to me. Forever, 3 soul contracts appeared in the air. They knew exactly what signing meant. Absolute slavery, no resistance possible, and if I died, they'd die too. But the alternative was death right now, so they signed. With 3 loyal servants secured, I moved on to gathering information. I asked them to tell me about the world's history. They didn't even know what Divine Creation Year 1 was. My entire era had been completely erased. The earliest history they knew started with the first era, called the Godfall, when the gods went to war with each other and civilization collapsed. Then came the second era, of rebuilding, the third era of prosperity, and the fourth era when the first demon king appeared and invaded the mortal world, creating the cycle of demon kings versus heroes. These 3 had all served different demon kings during the fourth era. At least 4 demon kings rose and fell, every single one defeated by heroes. So my existence had been wiped out by the God Wars. That was actually good news. Nobody knew about me. And honestly, all those later demon kings were weaklings. A demon king could barely fight 2 heroes to a draw. Meanwhile, I'd faced 8 heroes at their peak, 27 elemental dragon lords, and countless other champions all at once. I only lost because the gods cheated. Still, knowing everyone outside was weaker than me didn't change my plan. Being reckless gets you sealed again. Stay smart, stay hidden. I gave the 3 demons a stack of new contracts to bring upstairs for the other Layer 8 lords to sign. These contracts were different from theirs, though. Only a 100-year term, not permanent. When the 3 realized everyone else was getting a better deal, they nearly choked with regret. Too late for that. Why are you still standing here? Want me to whip you into moving? They scrambled upstairs immediately. As soul forms, they didn't need Purple Wing's help to travel. They could survive without bodies for a long time. Once it was quiet again, I started planning. I was going to turn this entire underground into my personal dungeon city. The key was souls. Souls are the universal currency between gods and demons, and as a being with both divine and demonic nature, I craved them too. But I wasn't going to consume souls directly. That was wasteful. The smart play was soul herding. When you own someone's soul through a contract, it feeds you a slow, steady stream of energy. Absorbing a soul outright gives you the same amount of energy as herding it for 3 or 4 months. The long-term math was obvious. That's why demons are always tricking people into selling their souls. It's not about collecting trophies, it's farming. My plan was to lure adventurers down here and get them to sign contracts, building up a herd of souls to steadily restore my power. Demon souls were useless for this. They only had value as slaves, not as energy sources. The corrupted monsters weren't worth it either, since their souls had already turned demonic from my radiation. The cost of making contracts for them would barely be covered by the returns. No, what I needed were mortal souls. Lots of them. And conveniently, there was apparently a whole adventurer industry operating right above my head. I tried building a model of the underground using magma, shaping a little 14-layer map to plan out my future dungeon city. But no matter how I rearranged things, nothing looked right. I'm a game designer, not an architect. I needed professionals, ideally goblins. They're greedy and annoying, but nobody beats them at building things and breeding fast. Plus, their souls are weak, making them easy to enslave. Problem was, I hadn't seen any goblins on the surface yet. I also couldn't afford to draw attention. There was an adventurer guild operating right above me. If anyone figured out a world-destroying dragon was sealed underneath, they'd lock this whole area down. I had to grow my power in secret and come up with believable explanations for any changes underground. Meanwhile, the 8-layer lords all signed the contracts without resistance. After seeing what happened to the ones who refused, a 100-year deal seemed perfectly reasonable. One of them, the Night Fiend Yularen, asked the vampiress Samantha if there were any orders yet. She coldly said no, but there would be soon. She was right. Since I owned their souls, I could send commands directly into their minds without needing a messenger. My first order was simple: build connecting tunnels through all the underground layers, and while they were at it, teach those Layer 7 creatures who attacked Purple Wing a lesson. The upper 5 layers already had passages carved out by adventurers. The lower 9 were up to my demon lords. They'd all served under demon kings before and had experience managing construction. Within a day, the tunnels were done, rough, but functional. Way better than the holes Purple Wing had blasted with brute force. I also told them I'd turned off my corruption's effect on them. When I was asleep, the pollution radiated uncontrollably and drove everything nearby insane. But now that I was awake, and more importantly, now that I was Zhou Miao and completely unaffected by the eldritch whispers, I could control my power with precision. I could let an ordinary human walk all the way down to my level unharmed if I wanted to. The bottom entrance turned out to be a corridor-style staircase, each step as tall as an adult human. Too big for normal people, but adventurers with superhuman abilities could handle it. Good enough for now, I told the lords. Once I get enough goblin slaves, we'll renovate properly. I sent the vampiress Samantha out to scout for large goblin settlements, with strict orders to stay hidden, especially from humans. She turned into a tiny bat and flew off through the new tunnels. The rest of the lords I dismissed. Time for business. My magic power had recharged, so I activated the mental space again. Stars flickered to life in the void around me. The first person to answer was, of course, the Night Lady. Again, why are you here? You know I'm a scammer, so why come back? I'm here to stop you. She stood with her hands on her hips, completely self-righteous. What did you say to that child last time? Confess. None of your business. Go sit in the corner. I shoved her behind a barrier before she could say another word. Her face turned red with fury, and I could see her grinding her teeth. Next, summon the swordsman. No response. Smart man. After getting burned alive last time, he wasn't touching that artifact again. Next, the bald old man showed up. He wasn't here to submit or fight. He just wanted to know how my magic worked. He'd spent the last 5 days trying to figure out the artifact and gotten nowhere. You go sit over there too. I tossed him next to the knight. He was still talking excitedly about magical theory as he flew through the air. Finally, Amira appeared. But instead of her usual cheerful greeting, she stood with her hands on her hips and demanded an explanation. You made me help you, but you hurt Grofy. Her last page disappeared. I'd expected this. I put on a slightly embarrassed tone and told her a story. Long ago, I'd made a small mistake. I liked playing pranks and kept knocking down people's houses. A hero punished me by locking me away, promising to let me out after a while. But that hero forgot, and I'd been stuck ever since. What she did with the book was just completing that hero's broken promise. She bought it mostly. Then she lectured me like a little adult. Knocking down houses is wrong. Don't do that again. Of course. I've deeply reflected on my behavior. With that settled, I asked her to tell me stories about the outside world. Heroes, divine weapons, anything she knew. She happily obliged, reciting tales her headmate had told her. Her speaking was remarkably smooth for someone so young. No stumbling, no pauses. I could see now that she carried divine blessings from the gods, likely granted because of her grandfather's heroic deeds. Every one of her natural talents was top tier. From her stories, I picked up useful details. Heroes only fight demons. They don't interfere in conflicts between kingdoms or attack wild monster tribes, since that would steal work from adventurers. During peacetime with no demon activity, heroes were basically just mascots. As for divine weapons, Only 5 of the 8 had known locations. The other 3 had been lost for thousands of years. Bad news for me. I needed all 8 to fully break my seal. When she ran out of stories, she asked me to tell one. Instead, I created something better. I built a whole amusement park in the mental space, based on memories from my previous life as a game designer. Roller coasters, colorful rides, cartoon characters, the works. I made a cute little cartoon dragon NPC to guide her around. Amira's eyes went wide. She grabbed the cartoon dragon's hand and walked in like she'd entered a dream. Even the 2 adults I'd shoved aside were staring with their mouths open. They knew it was fake, but they'd never seen anything like an amusement park before. I dropped the barrier around them and turned to the old man. Answer some questions. I'll pay you. The moment he heard, pay, his eyes lit up. Ask away, buddy. What era is it now? The 6th. Who are the current heroes? The old one is Fallon Hugo, that little girl's grandfather, owner of the World Book. The strong one is Edson Griffin, owner of the Earth Shield, in his prime. And the newest is Villapami Monroe, just recently chosen by the Sky Wing. I asked several more questions and got a decent picture of the current situation. The continent was in a recovery period after the last Demon King's defeat. Peaceful on the surface, but plenty of trouble brewing underneath. The old man rubbed his hands together and looked at me expectantly. I'd promised payment, so I pulled an ancient alchemy notebook from my memories and tossed it to him. It was junk to me. Something the original dragon had stolen ages ago, full of crude notes and errors. But the old man's eyes practically glowed. Not because the content was brilliant, but because it was ancient and full of ideas he'd never encountered before. Things that sparked new inspiration. Okay, I'm starting to believe you might actually be some ancient relic who crawled out of a tomb somewhere, he said, too excited to watch his words. I rolled my eyes. Then the knight spoke up. What exactly are you? None of your business. I turned toward the amusement park, planning to check on Amira before wrapping up. Wait, the knight called out. We can talk. Tell me what you want. Maybe I can help. I stopped and looked back. What kind of talk did you have in mind? Amira showed up next, and the knight immediately marched over to talk to her. The little girl was riding a carousel in my amusement park, licking an ice cream cone and having the time of her life. She waved at the knight happily, but the knight wasn't in a playing mood. After a quick conversation, she came back. What spell did you make her read? She demanded. One that loosened my punishment. That's the truth. So you really are some monster sealed by a hero? You could say that. I didn't mind admitting this much. As long as she didn't know my true identity or realize how powerful I actually was, it wouldn't matter. She asked my name, and I told her again. Kuin, the world-ending calamity. She wasn't impressed. She actually smirked and said being ancient doesn't mean being strong, and that since heroes had sealed me before, I couldn't be much of a threat even if I got free. I pretended to be stung by that. In reality, today's heroes were nothing compared to the army that took me down originally. But I wanted her to think I was a manageable, controllable threat, not something world-ending. Then she made me an offer. Stop involving the child, and she'd help me with things, as long as they didn't go against justice. She saw it as sacrificing herself to protect Amira, very much in line with her holy knight values. Fine, I said. We have a deal. I won't harm the child. I'd never planned to hurt Amira anyway. Collecting all the divine weapons was a long-term goal, no rush. So what do you want me to do? She asked, bracing herself for something terrible. Give me a detailed map of the continent. Absolutely not. That kind of, wait, what? She blinked. A map? That's it? Unless you'd prefer to offer yourself to a demon instead. You crude beast, she spat. But she agreed. I also showed her a little exit button I'd added to the mental space. A semi-transparent rectangle in the upper left of her vision labeled, Exit. She could leave anytime now. She said she'd stay until Amira left, since she didn't trust me. Fair enough. The old man, meanwhile, asked if he could take the alchemy notebook back to reality. I told him no, but I'd implanted the contents into his consciousness. He could review it with his eyes closed anytime. He was relieved. We stayed until Amira's mental energy ran low, then I ended the session. 3 days later, the vampiress Samantha returned from her scouting mission. She'd found goblins, a massive tribe on a place called the Gur Plains, not far from here. Over 100,000 of them. That was a staggering number. A goblin population that large was practically a disaster waiting to happen. big enough to form a goblin kingdom and threaten other races. Haven't the nearby kingdoms tried to stop them? I asked. Samantha shook her head. She didn't know the political situation, but she'd spotted plenty of bones from other intelligent races inside the goblin settlement, along with living prisoners. That told me everything. People had tried to wipe them out. They'd failed. I sent the vampirist back out to gather more information on the goblin tribe. If I could enslave tens of thousands of them, that would be more than enough labor to build my underground city. I already had a plan forming for how to manipulate them. Meanwhile, something interesting happened in the upper layers that played right into my hands. On the third underground floor, a young adventurer named Perry was dying. He'd only been in the business for a year, all to pay for medicine for his sick mother. His father had abandoned them during a famine when he was small, and his mother had nearly killed herself keeping him alive. He'd sworn to give her a good life, but reality wasn't kind. He'd actually been doing well. He'd just killed a powerful swamp toad and taken its valuable poison sac. That single prize would have been enough to buy a life essence, potion, an advanced medicine that could cure any common disease and even extend life. He was so close to saving his mother. But a gang of 4 well-equipped adventurers called the McQueen Group had been watching him. They jumped him, beat him half to death, stole everything, and dumped him in a skeleton soldier cave to die. These kinds of predatory groups were everywhere among adventurers. The guild had rules against it, but if nobody saw anything, nothing happened. Perry lay bleeding on the cave floor, surrounded by bones that would come alive at nightfall and kill anything breathing. Even without the skeletons, his wounds were fatal. He was fading. That's when I reached him. My servants had brought him down to the bottom level on my orders. I'd told them to find adventurers who were desperate, people with nothing left to lose and a powerful reason to live. Those were the ones most willing to sell their souls. Perry was my first test subject. I spoke into his mind. Do you want to live? Of course I do. But who are you? I am the consciousness of the eternal night forest, I told him. That was my cover story, a made-up identity. I explained that I'd recently awakened and that everything in this forest, the trees, the rocks, the ground, was part of my body. Why me? He asked, scared. I want to try something. All you need to answer is, do you want to live? Yes. I'll do anything, even sell your soul. He went quiet for a moment. Then, firmly, even that, easier than I expected. He clearly had a reason worth dying for, or in this case, worth selling his soul for. I presented a soul contract in his mind. Simple terms. He transfers ownership of his soul to me, and in exchange, I heal him and grant him powers other adventurers don't have. A brush appeared in his consciousness. He hesitated briefly, then signed his name. The moment Perry signed the contract, I flooded his body with healing energy and knocked him out. My servants carried him back to the skeleton cave so he'd think he never left. When he woke up, his wounds were healed. He felt great, and he had no idea what had really happened. Then he noticed a red diamond-shaped mark on his wrist. When he touched it, a glowing panel appeared in front of his eyes. Name, race, level, combat power, skills, inventory, all laid out like a video game interface. This was my real innovation, and honestly, I was pretty proud of it. Back in my previous life, I was a game designer. I understood systems. In this world, getting stronger depended entirely on natural talent, but talent was invisible. People trained for years with no way to know if their effort was actually paying off. Some people worked incredibly hard and got nowhere. Others barely tried and became powerhouses. My panel changed everything. It made stats visible, quantified experience points, and let people see themselves getting stronger in real time. Leveling up meant a genuine boost in power. Any smart person would instantly see the value. But here's the thing, I wasn't just being generous. Simple secret soul harvesting was too slow, and forcing people to sign contracts would scare everyone away and bring investigators. The panel was bait. Give people something amazing, and they'd come to me willingly. That was sustainable farming. Perry couldn't read, but the panel's text was automatically understandable. I'd built that in. He was stunned and excited, like a character in a bard's tale who'd stumbled onto a legendary power. A skeleton soldier started assembling itself behind him. He quickly closed the panel, grabbed a weapon, and fought his way toward the cave exit. He killed the skeleton easily. He was a decent fighter, and a strange ball of light flew from the bones into his body. He checked his panel. His experience had gone up by 2 points. That changed everything for him. Instead of running, he stayed and kept killing. One skeleton after another. On the 16th kill, his experience bar filled up, he hit level 2, his health fully restored, and he felt noticeably stronger. The excitement on his face was exactly what I'd hoped for. Kill monsters, get stronger, see the numbers go up. It was addictive by design. He wanted to keep going forever, but a whole swarm of skeletons poured out of the cave, and he had to retreat. Purple Wing had been watching from above the whole time and brought the memories back to me. The system worked perfectly. Once word spread about what Perry could do, getting stronger just by killing monsters, with visible proof, other adventurers would come looking for the same deal. They'd seek me out and offer their souls willingly. And with a whole forest full of soul-contracted adventurers under my influence, I could send them on quests to find the missing divine weapons. Freedom was looking more possible by the day. All I needed now was for the goblins to arrive so construction on my dungeon city could begin. I was in such a good mood that my real body started humming songs from my previous life. Unfortunately, a dragon's voice is basically thunder. The sound was deafening. But I didn't care. The vampiress brought back incredible intelligence. She'd not only found the goblin tribe, she'd infiltrated their war council without anyone noticing. The Guk tribe was massive, 130,000 goblins controlling 12 mine veins on the Gur Plains. They had their own underground fortress city called Anvil and were run by 12 leaders, a great chieftain, a master forger, mine lords, war generals, workshop masters, a judge, and a shaman high priest. They'd just fought off another attack from the nearby Wind Lion Kingdom. The battle was ugly on both sides. The goblins had alchemy machines, war vehicles, airships, and human-shaped crushing mechs. The kingdom sent griffin riders, infantry, cavalry, mages, and holy knights. The goblins won, barely, but their casualties were heavy. The kingdom wasn't using its full strength. It couldn't afford to, with other rival kingdoms nearby. Some human leaders realized they could wipe the goblins out if they committed fully, but nobody wanted to pay that price over just some wild monsters. A dangerous gamble. At the council meeting, the goblin leaders were typically arrogant, ranting about how goblins were the supreme race and all others were created to be their slaves. Classic goblin delusion. But underneath the bluster, the chieftain knew they needed more power. Their bodies were too weak. He turned to the old shaman and asked if their god, the furnace Father Ulges, could bless their warriors. The shaman said no. Their god only blessed crafting talent, not warfare. But, the shaman added, I can try contacting other mysterious beings for help. Apparently shamans from all sorts of monster races loved reaching out to unknown powers. Many got themselves killed doing it, but they never learned. This particular shaman was strong, 7 life evolutions, spells up to 8th circle, and he'd survived multiple attempts at contacting strange entities, though not without scars. The chieftain was thrilled. He wanted a permanent partnership with some powerful being. We goblins aren't afraid to sacrifice, he said, meaning ordinary goblin foot soldiers, of course, not himself. My opportunity couldn't have been more perfect. An entire goblin nation actively looking for a mysterious patron? They were practically begging to become mine. I gave the vampiress a complex rune and told her to watch the old shaman. When he started his ritual to contact an unknown power, she was to secretly draw this rune near him. That would redirect his call straight to me. One more thing, I said. You've been working hard running back and forth. Take this. I formed a dark red orb of energy and sent it into her body. She froze for a moment. Then her eyes went wide. She'd just received something extraordinary. A reward for good service. Even slaves work better with the occasional carrot. What I'd given the vampiress was called divine blood essence. Not actual god blood, but a legendary substance made from rare materials. For a vampire, it was the ultimate prize, able to purify their bloodline and push them closer to the vampire ancestor. At her level, Samantha had long given up on ever getting stronger. She'd been sleeping in a coffin underground, barely surviving on my corruption energy. Being enslaved had felt like the end. But now, suddenly, there was hope. She was shaking with gratitude. Good. A master who rewards loyalty gets better work than one who only punishes. Her previous demon king had been pure cruelty, tormenting servants over nothing, which is why she and most others had fled without hesitation when the heroes came. I intended to be smarter than that. After she left, I turned my attention to a new project, a massive tentacle-like plant I was growing in the bottom layer. I called it the ground eye. The idea was to spread its tendrils through every layer of the underground, creating a surveillance network I could tap into with my consciousness. Building an entirely new species from scratch was complicated and draining, but I had nothing but time down here. While I was working on it, Purple Wing came back early from its daily patrol, which meant something unusual had happened. I read its memories. It had been following Perry, my first contracted adventurer. In just 2 days, the kid had stayed underground non-stop, grinding monsters until he hit level 3. He was noticeably stronger now, and he'd gone hunting, not for monsters, but for the McQueen gang who'd robbed him and left him for dead. He found them exiting a giant armored lizard nest, exhausted and beaten up from a fight. Actually, Perry had caused that fight. He'd snuck into the nest and woken up all the lizards, hoping the swarm would kill the gang. They survived, barely, but they were completely drained. Perry stepped out of the shadows. McQueen didn't even recognize him at first. When he did, he couldn't believe the kid was alive. The gang sent their Iron Fist fighter to deal with him. The big man walked over confidently, remembering how easily they'd beaten Perry before. Perry didn't bother talking. He blurred forward so fast the fighter only had time to widen his eyes before a dirty dagger punched through his chest. Perry pulled it out and tore through the rest of the group before anyone could react. They were spent. No stamina, no supplies, no chance. McQueen ended up on the ground with all 4 limbs cut off, crying and begging. Perry grabbed him by the hair and dragged him toward the lizard nest. You said it yourself. This is just how adventurers are. He threw them all in, one by one. Exactly the death they'd meant for him. Afterward, Perry checked his panel and noticed something. Killing adventurers gave 0 experience. He understood immediately. Of course I designed it that way. I couldn't have my soul-herded adventurers farming each other. He was about to head to the surface to clean up and write a letter home to his mother, when a beautiful female voice spoke from behind him. What is that thing? Can you tell me about it? His heart stopped. Cold sweat instantly covered his back. I watched this through Purple Wing's memories and felt a jolt of concern. Someone had seen the panel. Through Purple Wing's memories, I watched what happened after Perry's revenge. A woman had been following him, a highly skilled assassin who'd been observing him for a while without him noticing. She'd seen everything. The glowing panel, the power gained from killing monsters, all of it. She cornered him against a stone pillar, twirling an expensive-looking dagger, and demanded answers. Perry had no choice. She was way above his level. He told her everything. The forest consciousness, the soul contract, the panel. I hadn't told him to keep it secret, and with his life on the line, the choice was obvious. The woman listened carefully. She seemed to have some way of detecting lies, because she didn't question anything. Then she asked Perry to open his panel. While examining it from behind him, she suddenly slashed his hand with a poisoned blade. He went rigid, full body paralysis. But instead of killing him, she pointed at his panel. A new line had appeared under his name. Status: Paralysis, 5H. Even Perry didn't know the panel could show that. Interesting, she muttered, eyes practically glowing. She clearly understood the panel's value far better than Perry did. She was educated, experienced, sharp. She cured his paralysis with some technique and demanded to know where to find me. Perry genuinely didn't know. She called him useless and vanished without even giving her name. I was thrilled. My second customer had come looking for me on her own, and she already knew the price was her soul. That's a quality client. I sent Purple Wing after her with orders to grab her when she was alone. Minutes later, it brought her down to the bottom level, unconscious, though not without picking up a few scratches. The fact that she could wound Purple Wing at all, while it was holding back to take her alive, was seriously impressive. I looked her over. Long black curly hair, a fitted high-quality assassin outfit, a half-mask covering her lower face, a beauty mark under her left eye. Clearly someone from a wealthy background who'd chosen the adventurer life. Interesting. She pretended to still be knocked out, but I noticed her fingers twitch. No need to fake it. I know you're awake. She instantly melted into the shadows and reappeared far away, crescent-shaped daggers in both hands. I'd set up a disguise for this meeting. Instead of my real dragon form, she saw only a pair of enormous eyes floating in a starry void. alongside Purple Wing. I couldn't show my real appearance this close to my body. Even my projected image carried too much of my true presence for mortals to handle. "Who are you? Where am I?" she demanded. "Aren't you the one looking for me? You're the will of the eternal night forest?" "That's right." She immediately relaxed and put her weapons away. Smart woman. She knew that if I'd wanted her dead, I wouldn't have bothered with conversation. "You know why you're here?" I asked. "To make a deal, I'm guessing. You want me to sell my soul." "Exactly. You found my first client and showed interest in my services, so naturally, I invited you for a proper consultation." "Client?" She seemed to find the word oddly commercial. "So, would you like to sign up?" "Same as Mr. Perry. You get your own panel." I kept my voice calm. No pressure, no threats. "Can I refuse?" she asked carefully. "Of course. I don't force anyone. After all, I'm not some evil being. I'm just a businessman." The female assassin was suspicious, naturally. She asked how she could trust me, and whether I'd erase her memory if she left. "No need," I told her. "I don't mind people knowing about me. I'm everywhere in this forest. I like making friends, and I love doing business. Then I'm leaving. Go ahead." I had Purple Wing escort her out through the tunnels, wrapped in illusion magic, so she couldn't see the real environment. If she strayed from Purple Wing's side, she'd go completely blind. Building trust mattered more than forcing one deal. She'd be back. Before she left, she asked how to find me again. I told her to go down to the 5th floor and call out, "Great Pathfinder." I had a special undead demon lord on the 8th floor who'd evolved into something unique, not recognizable as a typical demon. Perfect as a receptionist for greeting customers. She followed Purple Wing up and arrived safely back on the 5th floor. As Purple Wing flew away, she actually waved goodbye like she was sad to see it go. Odd woman. Now for the goblins. The vampiress Samantha had been watching the old shaman of the Guk tribe. He'd spent days searching through ancient books for a supernatural being to contact, and finally settled on something called a High Devourer, a semi-divine parasite that rented out its power in exchange for souls as collateral and monthly payments of life essence. If the borrower died, it kept the soul. The goblin warriors were willing to accept those terms to survive their war with the Wind Lion Kingdom. The old shaman drew his ritual circle on the floor, chanting carefully. He didn't notice the tiny bat on the ceiling beam above him, quietly carving my rune right where I needed it. The ritual activated. Green smoke billowed up from the glowing circle, and a hideous four-eyed face emerged, the High Devourer, answering the call. It opened its mouth to speak, but then my rune fired. Orange sparks erupted through the green smoke. A massive dragon head, mine, lunged forward and swallowed the High Devourer's face whole. The green energy instantly converted to orange flame. The old shaman's jaw dropped. In his entire career of contacting mysterious beings, he'd never seen anything like this. Somewhere in a pocket dimension, the real High Devourer woke up screaming with rage. Its first client in who knows how long, and some unknown competitor had stolen the deal right out from under it. According to the unwritten rules among such beings, this was a serious offense. It swore to find whoever did this and rally others to punish them. I didn't know about that, and wouldn't have cared if I did. These pocket dimension parasites were just rats who'd hidden in corners during the real wars, feeding on scraps. Nothing to worry about. The old shaman pulled himself together fast. He dropped to his knees and addressed me respectfully. "Great and mysterious sovereign, the humble goblins seek power to fight the despicable humans. We offer our souls as payment." "I don't want your pathetic goblin souls," I said bluntly. He gripped his staff tighter. I could tell he was furious inside, deeply insulted, but his face stayed perfectly reverent. Good survival instincts. However, I continued, "I do enjoy war." That was my way of saying yes. Before he could ask questions or negotiate terms, I hit him with my power directly. His body lifted off the ground, locked in place, as raw energy poured into him. His shriveled muscles swelled and filled out. His grayish-green skin turned vivid red. Bone spurs grew from his body. When I dropped him, he crashed to the floor gasping. He looked down at his new powerful body. Thick muscles, sharp bone growths, surging life force. And his shock transformed into pure, wild joy. The hook was set. Now I just needed to reel in the rest of the tribe. The old shaman dropped to his knees immediately, calling me his master. I just chuckled and told him to share my gift with his people. He was completely consumed by the power rushing through his body, rational thought gone, replaced by pure fanaticism. Exactly what I wanted. The entire Guk tribe was called to assemble on the plains outside their fortress. Over 10,000 goblins crowded together, buzzing with confusion. On a hastily built platform stood the 12 leaders, with the old shaman at the center next to a massive iron cauldron filled with glowing orange potion, my concoction. The shaman gave a fiery speech about goblin supremacy, shedding their green skin, embracing the red flame, enslaving every other race. The crowd roared back with their war cry, classic goblin delusion, but useful delusion. The great chieftain went first. He drank from a bone bowl, collapsed in agony as his body transformed, muscles swelling, skin turning red, white beard going black, dragon-shaped bone spurs erupting from his back. When it was over, he stood tall, no longer hunched, radiating power he'd never had before. He was ecstatic. The master forger went next, then the other leaders, one after another. Each transformed into what they started calling red goblins, bigger, stronger, more powerful versions of themselves. But then came a surprise. 5 leaders refused to drink. The 4 war generals and the Iron Law judge stayed back. Their leader, a general named Ficus, walked up, took the bowl, stared at the potion, and poured it back into the cauldron. I think goblins should look like goblins, he said. I'm strong enough to lead our warriors to victory without turning red, the other 4 agreed. They were young, confident, proud of who they were. They didn't want to become something else. The old shaman warned them they'd regret it, but couldn't force them. So the Guk tribe split into 2 factions, red goblins and green goblins. This was actually fine by me. Internal division would make them easier to control in the long run. The red ones were already mine through the potion. The green ones would come around eventually, or they wouldn't matter. Meanwhile, the female assassin, whose name turned out to be Orna, made it back to her adventurer team at Station 43 in the Eternal Night Forest. She casually told her 5 teammates that she'd been knocked out by a purple dragon-like creature and had a chat with a being claiming to be the forest consciousness. They all stared at her in shock. Then the big armored warrior by the window laughed it off. Orna's joking again. How could there be a dragon here? Everyone relaxed, assuming it was her usual habit of saying outrageous things for fun. But Orna shrugged and insisted she wasn't kidding. She'd really encountered a monster as powerful as a dragon that knocked her out effortlessly. Nobody believed her, which was perfectly fine with me. When she eventually came back to sign a contract, she'd bring first-hand credibility, but for now, the secret stayed safe without me having to do anything. Orna's teammates decided to head home. Most of them came from important families, and with the goblin situation on the Gur Plains escalating, their relatives wanted them back. They'd been out adventuring for a while anyway. Only Orna stayed behind. She had no interest in going home. She called her family's estate a suffocating cage, and apparently her father would be happy if she died out here. The others tried to convince her otherwise, but she just laughed bitterly. After everyone left, she lay in bed alone, thinking. Then something shifted in her mind, and she made a decision. She melted into the shadows and vanished. Down in my prison, I was studying a continental map. The night Rosalind had delivered it during a quick mental meeting. No small talk, just a handoff. My power had recovered enough that the cooldown between meetings was cut in half, which surprised her. The map showed that the continent hadn't changed much from the dragon's ancient memories, though the Eternal Night Forest was no longer as isolated as the old Forgotten Land had been. I was about to get back to building my ground eye surveillance system when I sensed the lantern undead approaching from above. I'd appointed it as my receptionist, the greeter for visiting customers. I'd also given it a makeover. Originally, it was a horrifying 8-meter column of twisted snake corpses with a soul lantern on top. Now it looked like a gentleman in a clean suit, holding a lantern in one hand, wearing a top hat over its lantern head, floating smoothly along. Much more customer-friendly. If the receptionist was coming down, that meant a client had arrived. Had to be Orna. Nobody else would come back this fast. Sure enough, it was her. She seemed relaxed this time, even chatting with the silent lantern guide on the way down. Changed your mind, beautiful lady? I greeted her. Nice to see you again. Mr. Will, she tried. You can call me Mr. Manager. All right, Mr. Manager. I've decided I want to make a deal. But let's negotiate properly. Of course. Business should always be discussed comfortably. I conjured a table and chairs beside her, complete with a tea set. The teapot floated up and poured steaming green tea into a cup. She'd never seen tea before. This world didn't have it. She took a sip and wrinkled her nose. It's bitter, not sweet. That's how tea tastes. I'd recreated it from my memories of green tea from my past life. I remembered hating it as a kid too, but growing to love it later. She set the cup down and got straight to business. She wanted to understand the panel before committing. I gave her the full pitch, status display, real-time feedback from killing monsters, measurable growth, visible progress. I explained everything like a proper salesman. She was clearly tempted but didn't rush. She took another sip of tea and said, "Sounds appealing, but asking someone to sell their soul just for this seems a bit unfair." "I think it's perfectly fair," I replied steadily. "Most people go through life without achieving anything. Their souls have no value even after death. But with the panel, hard work actually pays off. Climbing above your station becomes possible, not just a dream." I paused, then added, "Trust me, if more people knew about this, there'd be plenty of them lining up to sell their souls." Orna pushed back on my pricing. She argued that the panel's value wasn't worth a full soul transfer for someone already powerful. It was a fair deal for ordinary people, but not for elites. Like her. I kept my cool. The buyer's status doesn't determine a product's value. We went back and forth for a while, neither getting heated but both holding firm. Finally, she made her real move. "What if you accepted soul rental instead of a full sale?" I knew that was what she'd been after all along. Soul rental meant a time-limited contract instead of permanent ownership. It was common knowledge on the continent that beings like demons and gods farmed souls for energy. A rental felt much safer for the customer. There was an exit. Fine, I agreed easily. But when the contract expires, you lose half the power you gained through the panel. This wasn't a hard decision. Volume mattered more than duration right now. The faster I built up my soul farm, the faster I'd recover my strength. If the farm got big enough, I might even break free without needing all 8 divine weapons. And with my game designer knowledge, once the panel system spread and I kept improving it, people would keep renewing. Orna looked genuinely surprised that I agreed so quickly. Then came the awkward part. "Can I start with just 1 month?" she asked carefully, like someone walking into an expensive store and buying the cheapest item. I almost laughed. A noble lady asking for the trial subscription. But I stayed warm and professional. "Sure, just help spread the word a little afterward. Nothing flashy, my business is just getting started." "Deal." She patted her chest confidently. She signed the contract, Orna Lancaster. A noble surname, confirming my guess about her background. The diamond mark appeared on her wrist, and she immediately opened her panel. Level 45. Combat Power 380, rated Elite. A full list of high-level skills. Shadow Walk at 51, Danger Sense at 20, Dual Blade Mastery at 41. An impressive sheet. She was thrilled, immediately spotting which skills were her strengths and weaknesses. And for me, the feedback was excellent. Her soul quality was outstanding. One of her was worth 10 parries in terms of energy return. After she left, I turned my attention to the Guk Goblin tribe. I'd set up viewing anchors through the Vampirus, letting me watch them daily through a magma mirror, one of my few entertainments. The tribe was splitting exactly as I'd predicted. The red goblins, now stronger, were developing superiority complexes and bullying the green holdouts. The internal tension would push the remaining greens to evolve eventually. Goblins were fundamentally cowardly and ambitious. Their pride and tradition wouldn't survive long once they saw themselves being left behind. I'd seen it countless times in the dragon's memories. Meanwhile, on the surface, Rosalind was having trouble with her plan. She'd met up with the princess of Blue Crystal Kingdom, a beautiful woman with violet eyes, to ask for help reaching Amira. But the princess turned her down. "I want to help you, Rosalind, but I can't. You know how protective the forest elves are of that child. As a princess, I can't risk creating a diplomatic incident over this." The knight stopped walking and stared at her friend, clearly frustrated. Her plan to reach the hero's granddaughter had just hit a wall. Things were moving on multiple fronts, though I only learned about some of them later. Rosalind was still trying to reach Amira. The princess, Saint Ronilon, had refused to personally escort her to the Phantom Dragon Forest. The political situation was too delicate. The forest elves treated Amira like a future queen, and any unexpected visit from a foreign princess could cause a diplomatic mess. The princess did agree to send a warning letter, which was something at least. Rosalind was stuck on her forced day off. Apparently, she was such a workaholic that the church had officially ordered her to rest 1 day a week. She and the princess were walking through a flower-scented street when a man collapsed in front of them, convulsing horribly with gray-white skin, and his eyes rolled back. Rosalind's instincts kicked in immediately. She rushed over and blasted him with healing light, but nothing worked. The man died right in front of her. Someone in the crowd screamed, "The brain thief is back." Turned out this was a serial killer from 2 years ago who could magically extract people's brains from a distance. Over 20 victims, 0 survivors. The whole city had been mobilized to catch him. Knights, investigators, even hero-level fighters, and they'd almost succeeded. Rosalind herself had nearly caught the killer, but he'd escaped. Now he was back, killing right in front of her face. A personal taunt. She stood there shaking with rage, fists clenched so hard they cracked. But that was her problem to deal with, not mine. Over on the Gur Plains, things were going exactly as I'd hoped. The Wind Lion Kingdom had assembled an even bigger army this time, convincing neighboring nations to contribute troops. If the goblins had still been ordinary, this force might have wiped them out. But my red goblins tore through them. The transformed warriors hit the enemy front lines like a wave of fire, burning through everything. The battle was short and brutal. The coalition army retreated in a hurry. The green goblins, meanwhile, were completely overshadowed. During the fight, they got shoved aside by red goblins, couldn't keep up, and ended up scavenging scraps in the rear. The great chieftain stood at the front afterward, hammer raised, roaring in triumph. All the cheering came from red goblins. The 4 war generals, the ones who'd refused to drink the potion, stood in a corner looking sick. They used to be the ones leading charges. Now they were background decoration. The chieftain was already stronger than all of them. In goblin society, leaders who fall behind in power lose their positions. If this kept up, they'd be replaced. The frustration was eating them alive. And I knew exactly what would come next. They'd give in. They'd drink the potion. They'd embrace the evolution, just like I'd predicted, because goblins couldn't stand being weak. Their pride and tradition was already crumbling under the weight of being irrelevant. Everything was falling into place. After the battle, exactly what I predicted happened. The 5 green goblin leaders, the 4 war generals, and the Iron Law judge went crawling to the old shaman begging for the transformation potion. But the shaman had other ideas. He'd been drunk on his new power, and now he looked down on green goblins like they were primitive savages. He told them flat out, no second chances. Green goblins were inferior, and the tribe didn't need them anymore. General Ficus lost his temper and threw a punch. He used to be the strongest warrior in the tribe. The old shaman caught his fist with one hand like it was nothing. Then the shaman straightened his hunched back, his robe slid off, and underneath was a body packed with explosive muscle. Ficus looked like a twig next to him. The shaman slammed his fist into Ficus's gut. The strongest green goblin dropped to his knees, throwing up. Then the shaman announced he and the chieftain had already decided. Green goblins wouldn't be expelled. They'd be enslaved. He started forming a dark energy ball to brand them as slaves. That's when I stepped in. I blasted a message directly into the old fool's brain. Who told you to make decisions on your own? Every single goblin in the tribe becomes red. Not one left out. Understood? I was furious. This idiot was about to let thousands of goblins slip out of my control. Every green goblin was a future worker for my underground city. I needed all of them transformed and bound to my power, not cast aside or turned into some petty shaman's personal slaves. The old shaman screamed, clutching his head as blood poured from his nose, ears, and eyes. He dropped to his knees and started slamming his forehead into the ground, begging for forgiveness. He kept going until the floor had a deep crater and his forehead was a bloody mess. When he finally stood up, the arrogance was completely gone. He turned to the green goblin leaders with an awkward, terrified expression and said quietly, "The Great Ones will. All green goblins must become red goblins." The green leaders stood there stunned for a moment, then broke into wild celebration. They'd gone from being told they'd be enslaved to getting exactly what they wanted. What a reversal. Meanwhile, back in the bottom layer, my Ground Eye project had its first breakthrough. The massive tentacle plant I'd been growing successfully pushed its tendrils up through the rock and soil. I connected my consciousness to it and could see through little fruits growing on the tendrils. Multiple camera angles of the layer above me appeared in my mind. It worked perfectly. Going downward was blocked by the seal around my body, as expected, but upward was clear. I was about to keep testing when something unexpected hit me, a strange sensation washing over my senses. Someone was summoning me. I was working on my ground eye when something unexpected hit me. Someone was using one of my artifacts to contact me. That shouldn't have been possible. Nobody in this era knew how to do that. I answered the call and entered the mental space. Standing there was Amira. "Kuan, you're here," she beamed at me. "How did you do this?" I asked, genuinely confused. I'd never taught her how to use the artifact to reach me. The artifact was designed for two-way communication. Subordinates could contact their master too, but I hadn't shared that knowledge with anyone. "Grofi taught me," she said simply. The World Book had figured it out on its own. After thinking about it, I realized what happened. My artifacts were so degraded after all these ages that most of their protective barriers had crumbled. The World Book, armed with modern analytical techniques, had probably been quietly studying the artifact for a while. When Amira asked to contact me, it just handed her the solution like it was nothing. This was a message aimed at me. "We're watching. Don't try anything with this girl. Cute." The World Book was flexing on me. I let it go. No point picking fights with divine weapons right now. Amira was mad at me, though. She'd been counting the days and scolded me for taking 5 days to visit instead of 4. I made up an excuse about being busy exploring the outside world after my recent release. She forgave me instantly and asked to play in the amusement park again. I set up the park and was about to leave a mental clone with her while I went back to real work. Then she said something that stopped me cold. "I'm going to memorize the whole park and build it inside Mama's Phantom Star Radiance." My mind went blank. "Amira, what is the Phantom Star Radiance?" She looked confused, like it was the most obvious thing. "It's just the Phantom Star Radiance." I described what I remembered, a planet-sized sphere covered in cracks leaking golden light, with floating totem fragments orbiting around it. "That's it. That's Mama's." Then she paused. "Actually, Mama's isn't that bright. And it has a hole in it." After asking more questions, I confirmed it. Amira's mother possessed the actual Phantom Star Radiance, one of the most ancient divine creations in existence, older than even the 8 divine weapons. The gods had made it as an experiment when creating celestial bodies. It came out wrong, so they compressed it into a light element container and tossed it away. A reject, but still God-made, and incredibly powerful. The first person to find it had unlocked less than a 10,000th of its power and became a legendary hero. And here's why it mattered to me personally. During the final battle against the original dragon, the Phantom Star Radiance had been used to strip away part of my divine authority and seal it inside the sphere's core. If I could get that authority back, my freedom would be much, much closer. I had no idea why it had a hole in it now, or why it had dimmed, but those were questions for later. What I did know was that Amira had just become even more important than before. She had access to the World Book, one of the 8 divine weapons. And now her mother had the Phantom Star Radiance, containing a piece of my stolen power. This little girl was an absolute treasure. I couldn't wait to see what other surprises she'd bring me. I asked Amira where the Phantom Star Radiance was. She said it was at home. Her mother didn't carry it around because it was too big and couldn't shrink anymore like it used to. That meant it was damaged. Combined with the hole Amira mentioned earlier, I had a bad feeling. What if someone had already extracted my stolen authority from inside it? It was my power, sure, but that didn't mean only I could use it. Plenty of capable people existed on this continent. If someone had taken it, I'd still have the highest claim and could reclaim it easily, but I'd have to find them first. I told myself not to overthink it. Like the divine weapons, the Phantom Star Radiance was a long-term goal, not something I could rush. I left a mental clone to play with Amira in the amusement park and brought my main consciousness back to my body. The Ground Eye project was going well, but hitting problems. The plant was growing too fast in some areas, causing uncontrollable mutations. Creatures on the 14th floor were also attacking the tendrils, treating them as invaders. Annoying, but I'd expected setbacks. Find the problem, fix the problem. The goblin situation was nearly complete. All I needed was to set up teleportation magic. and every red goblin could be instantly branded with a slave mark. No guilt about that whatsoever. Goblins were vile creatures by nature, and their best use was manual labor. Meanwhile, on the fifth underground floor, Orna was making quite a name for herself. A veteran adventurer team called the Crescent Moon Company was fighting for their lives against a massive beast called a Deadland Berserker Lion. They'd come prepared for a different target, a 1,000-legged giant serpent, only to find it already dead, killed by this lion. Now they were trapped by the lion's cage ability with the wrong gear and fading fast. The team leader, a former Blood Moon Knight, was torn between his code of honor and reality. If teammates shielded him, he alone could escape. But his knight's faith wouldn't let him abandon comrades. If nobody left, everyone would die, and every one of them had families depending on them. Just as he was about to make that impossible choice, a black shadow blurred across the lion's body. Slash after slash appeared, dark wounds cutting across its hide. The beast roared and thrashed, but couldn't shake the attacker. The shadow moved without weight or inertia, completely untouchable. Within moments, the lion was covered in black gashes. The wounds connected, formed a net across its body, and the entire creature crumbled into pieces. Orna stepped out of the shadows. The Crescent Moon team recognized her immediately. The mysterious assassin the other adventurers called Phantom Blade. Everyone knew her group was wealthy noble kids playing at adventuring, and most regular adventurers looked down on them with jealous contempt. But Orna's actual combat power was on another level entirely. No amount of expensive gear explained what she could do. As the lion's corpse fell apart, an energy orb flew out and merged into Orna's body. She casually opened her panel right there in front of everyone, checked her experience gain, and clicked her tongue in annoyance. That huge thing only gave 500 experience. The word was spreading exactly as I'd planned, even if I wasn't personally watching every moment. The Crescent Moon Adventurer team. That Orna saved didn't think much of her panel. Their leader assumed it was just some fancy toy a rich noble kid had commissioned from a wizard. That was fine. Seeds take time to grow. Orna had been grinding monsters on the 5th floor for nearly a week, but her level was so high that the experience requirements were enormous. She was barely halfway to leveling up. She considered going after stronger monsters, but knew that as an assassin, one mistake against something truly dangerous meant death. So she kept farming safely, openly displaying her panel whenever anyone was nearby. She wasn't going to act like a salesman, just let people see it and get curious. Meanwhile, on the 3rd floor, Perry was doing exactly what I'd hoped. After getting his revenge, he'd gone back to the surface, sold his loot, and bought the life essence potion for his mother. Seeing her healthy face made everything worth it. But he wanted more for her. A better house, servants to look after her. So he threw himself back into monster hunting with terrifying dedication, grinding experience nonstop. He nearly died several times from ambushes by higher-level monsters, but he just kept going. His rapid improvement didn't go unnoticed. At first, other adventurers just gossiped about the reckless kid at the tavern. But as his strength visibly jumped, experienced people got suspicious. High-level assassin-type adventurers started tailing him in secret. Perry couldn't detect them. He wasn't skilled enough yet. They watched him kill monsters, absorb energy, and check his glowing panel. They figured out everything without even confronting him. Then they learned that Orna on the 5th floor had the same thing. That got people thinking. Some teams sent representatives to ask Orna directly. She was completely open about it, told them everything, just as she'd promised me. Others pressured Perry into confirming the same story. Soon, the information spread through the top circles of the adventurer community. Somewhere deep underground, an entity calling itself the Will of the Eternal Night Forest would grant you a power-enhancing panel in exchange for renting your soul. Most people hesitated. Selling, even renting, your soul was a big deal, worth thinking twice about. But not everyone had the luxury of hesitation. The Blackstone Adventurer team was desperate. Every member had been kicked out of their previous teams for underperforming. They'd banded together to prove themselves, but kept failing against strong monsters. They'd gone into debt buying equipment, had no income, and were literally about to starve. People told them to quit or take easier jobs, but they were all too stubborn. When they heard about the panel, they didn't think twice. They were already dying. What was a soul rental compared to that? Late one night, They crept down to the 5th floor using safe routes. Their team leader spoke the words, "Great Pathfinder." The gentleman in the suit appeared, my lantern-headed receptionist, floating elegantly with his top hat and lamp, exactly as described in the rumors. And watching from the shadows, many pairs of eyes saw the whole thing. My business was officially open. The Blackstone Adventurer team was the first to take the plunge publicly, and plenty of people were watching from the shadows when my receptionist appeared. The team leader, a red-bearded warrior named Bane Rowe, spoke politely and asked to see me. The Pathfinder led them into the dark tunnel, and when some spies tried to follow, an invisible force pushed them back. I was delighted to see 7 new customers. 7 souls to farm, a great sign of things to come. They'd already decided on 3-month contracts. No hesitation. They signed, got their panels, and immediately noticed something different from what they'd heard about. A team feature under their names. I designed this specifically for groups. It let them chat through voice or telepathy, send supplies, and view each other's basic stats. They instantly understood how valuable this was. In combat, noise, chaos, and distance made communication a nightmare. This solved all of it. Sure, similar magic existed, but only elite organizations like hero parties or demon-slaying armies could afford custom communication spells from top wizards. For broke adventurers, getting this for just a soul rental was an incredible deal. After they left, they were immediately surrounded on the 5th floor by over a dozen people wanting to know what happened. The leader of the group was a famous swordsman called Curly Brow Talk from the Rose Sword Adventurer team. Bane told them everything. The crowd went silent. The team communication feature especially grabbed everyone's attention. Every adventurer team would want that. Curly Brow Talk smiled and said he was looking forward to seeing how the Blackstone team performed. But when his own teammate asked if they should sign up too, he shook his head. Let's wait 3 months and see what happens when their contracts expire. Smart. Cautious. I respected that. The careful ones would come around eventually, once they saw the results with their own eyes. The information spread quickly. Among those watching were members of the Adventurer Guild itself. A report landed on the desk of Guild President Rowan, a sharp-eyed, gray-haired, powerfully built man. He read everything about the mysterious underground entity and sent his assistant to notify the nearest Holy Light Church. An investigation team from the church would be coming to look into things. If the manager was harmless, they'd pursue friendly contact and possible cooperation. If dangerous, they'd shut it down. And if they couldn't handle it, they'd close the entire Eternal Night Forest and declare it a restricted zone. That last option was the one I absolutely couldn't let happen. My entire soul farming operation depended on adventurers coming here freely. I'd need to handle this investigation very carefully. I wasn't aware of what was happening on the surface with Rosalind, but I'd learn about it soon enough. She'd been having a terrible time. The brain thief, that serial killer from 2 years ago, had returned to Sky Capital and was escalating. This time the victim was an old nun named Anderson at a church relief house. Anderson had been kind to Rosalind and the other young members of the church, always offering guidance. Now she was dead, her brain stolen. When Rosalind arrived at the scene, she first screamed for her friend Alina. Thankfully, Alina was alive, shaken and crying, but safe. The relief hit Rosalind hard, followed immediately by guilt for feeling relieved when someone else had just died. She couldn't bring herself to look at Anderson's body. An older knight named Baron mocked her for it, said she had a long way to go as a guardian of the Holy Light. He wasn't entirely wrong, but his timing was cruel. Alina stepped in front of Rosalind and glared at him. Back at her home, exhausted and devastated, Rosalind found a note tucked under her blanket. The brain thief had been inside her house. The note taunted her, said the old nun's brain was delicious, that Rosalind's would be saved for last, and that the next target might be that pretty little nun beside you, meaning Alina. She crushed the note and smashed her table with her fist. That's when her bracelet, the artifact connecting her to me, started glowing. Bad timing on my part. I'd been planning to build a teleportation array and needed blue magic ore, so I called this meeting specifically to ask her for supplies. I need some blue magic, or could you help me get lost? I was stunned. She'd never exploded like this before. What's gotten into you? Let me out. I'm in no mood to deal with you. I was about to teach her a lesson with some dragon fire when I noticed something strange. I leaned in closer with one eye and examined her carefully. Are you abandoning the holy light? Don't you dare question my faith. She reached for her sword, but it wasn't there. She'd left it at home. If you're not abandoning it, then why has your holy light power weakened so much? She froze. She checked herself and discovered it was true. Her holy light protection had dimmed significantly. That hit her like a thunderbolt. She collapsed to her knees. No, holy light, please don't abandon me. It's not the light abandoning you, I said, shaking my dragon head. You're drifting away from it. She looked up at me. What do you mean? The holy light makes people strong, brave, and positive, I explained. But if someone under its protection chooses to fall into darkness, the light can't help them. I knew more about holy light than most bishops did. When you're the enemy, studying your opponent is basic survival. Rosalind seemed to understand what was happening to her, but she couldn't pull herself out of it. Something was eating at her, something that had her so rattled she was losing her connection to the very power she lived by. Seems like you've got a problem, I said. None of your business. Let me out. I reminded her about the exit button. She raised her hand to press it, and that's when I casually mentioned I'd just ask little Amira for help instead. Her hand froze. You promised you wouldn't involve her. I'm not hurting her. Just asking a favor. She ground her teeth. What do you want? Got her. Nothing major. Just about 3 tons of blue magic, or 3 tons? Do you have any idea how much that costs? Blue magic or was incredibly rare and tightly controlled. Getting 3 tons would cost Rosalind a fortune in money and favors. But I genuinely had no other option. My demon servants couldn't stay on the surface long. The heroes could sense powerful demons if they lingered, and they only came from specific minds controlled by various factions. Rosalind was the only person I knew with both the connections and the resources. The bald alchemist was broke. Amira was a child who couldn't explain why she needed tons of rare minerals. That left the knight. She refused, said she could manage half a ton at most, and didn't have the energy to deal with my requests right now. So I switched tactics. Tell me your problem first. If I solve it, you get me 3 tons. Fair trade. The holy light will protect me. I laughed gently. The light is far away. I'm right here, ready to actually help. Don't wait until it's too late and regret it. Her face went white for a second. I caught it immediately. Whatever she was dealing with, it threatened someone she cared about, and she felt powerless. I pushed a little more. The light is real, but it's not all-powerful. It can't eliminate every shadow in the world. That's on you mortals. She went quiet. I could tell she was thinking about someone who died despite being in a holy place. Proof that faith alone wasn't enough. Finally, in a low voice, tell me how you'd help. I held back my grin. I need details first. She told me about the brain thief, a serial killer who could steal people's brains without touching them, who'd been terrorizing her city for years. She'd almost caught the killer once, but failed. Now the killer was back, had murdered an old nun she cared about, and had left a threatening note in her own home promising to target her friend Alina next. She deliberately left out names of places and people, still cautious around me, which was smart. I didn't need those details anyway. I already had my answer. I think I know what technique the killer is using. Have you ever heard of void walking? She thought for a moment, then shook her head. No wonder you couldn't catch them, I said. Void walking is a practice where someone makes a contract with void creatures and learns to move through the void realm. While in the void, they can see into the real world and interact with it physically. Reaching through someone's skull to extract their brain? Not difficult at all with that ability. Just tell me how to catch this damn void walker, the knight demanded. I explained the key problem. To catch a void walker, she needed a way to enter the void realm herself. Otherwise, even if she found the killer, they'd just slip into the void and disappear. Exactly what had happened the first time she'd almost caught them. She'd wounded the brain thief badly, cornered them, and then watched them fade away right before her eyes, leaving only a threat. I'll remember you, knight. Wait for my revenge. She'd ignored that threat back then. She was a holy knight, a duke's daughter. Why fear a criminal? She never imagined the killer would go after the people around her instead. How do I enter the void realm? She asked. I could have told her to go research it herself, but I wanted my blue magic ore. So I gave her a spell and carved a temporary rune on her hand. Together, they'd let her slip into the void smoothly. No materials needed, no rituals, no cost. She got excited and wanted to rush out immediately. I had to slow her down. That only lets you catch the killer once you find them. Do you even know how to locate them? She calmed down. Her tone even softened. She almost called me, sir, before catching herself. The gratitude was real, even if this was a transaction. She knew that without a solution, she might lose her friend Alina. I gave her the rest. Void walkers always kept their contracted void creature nearby. I taught her a potion recipe that would react to void creatures. Put it in a clear bottle, carry it around the city. The closer she got to the target, the stronger the reaction. The detection range covered an entire human capital city, so it wouldn't take forever. I also taught her a special sacrifice ritual so she could send me the blue magic or once she had it. After she memorized everything, the meeting ended. What I didn't see, but would piece together later, was what was happening on the killer's end. In a filthy, run-down apartment somewhere in Sky Capital, the brain thief, a tall, messy-haired man in dirty clothes, was being scolded by someone in the bedroom. Apparently, the killer wasn't working alone. Someone was giving him orders, and they were furious about the church attack. You idiot. Attacking near a church? If this blows up and the whole city goes on lockdown, my people can't operate. The killer brushed it off, said it was just a relief house on the edge of church grounds. No big deal. The voice behind the door disagreed and threatened him. After the argument, the man sat on a broken sofa in the trashed living room. A snake-like head poked out from his collar, his void creature. It had a serpent's face but a body with 6 pairs of fleshy wings and 8 stubby legs. It went transparent, caught a mouse in the corner, and started eating. The killer was already thinking about his next target. He wanted a young, vibrant woman's brain. His ideal choice was still that pretty little nun, Rosalind's friend, but she kept staying inside the church where it was too risky. If he couldn't get to her, he'd have to pick someone else, which would break his promise to the night. He smiled thinking about how angry Rosalind had looked. A knock at the door. Open up, ma'am. Security office. The man calmly stood up, grabbed a coat, and his body began to shrink and hunch. Within seconds, he'd transformed into a frail old woman who opened the door with wrinkled, trembling hands. The killer was hiding in plain sight. The brain thief turned out to be more than just a lone killer. He was working for someone, a boss who yelled at him through a bedroom door for being reckless enough to attack near a church. After the scolding, he shapeshifted into a frail old woman when a young security officer knocked on his door to warn about increased patrols. He played the role perfectly. The officer clearly knew her and had no suspicions at all. Once the door closed, he changed back and muttered about needing to lay low for a while. I didn't know any of this yet. What I did know was that my business was booming. The whole Eternal Night Forest was buzzing about the panel. The Blackstone team had become the poster children. Once a joke team that couldn't even earn a basic rank, they were now hunting monsters that gave experienced teams trouble. Perry was even more impressive. In just over a month, he'd gone from an unranked nobody to a blazing star-level adventurer, skipping right past Apprentice, Firefly, and Flowing Moon ranks. Most adventurers spent their entire lives stuck between those lower tiers. People were so desperate for panels that some were willing to get kicked out of their teams just to go down to the 5th floor and sign up. My customer base was growing steadily. I noticed a group in a tavern corner wearing matching white robes, clearly not adventurers. Church investigators, probably. One blue-eyed old man said something about needing to hurry before all the adventurers sold their souls. That would require careful handling on my part. Down on the 3rd floor, Perry hit level 10 and was planning his move to the 4th floor for better experience gains. He was grinding a crystal skeleton mage when he found a purple stone with strange markings in the monster's jaw. The moment it was exposed to light, it flared up and started ripping Perry's soul right out of his body. I felt it immediately. Someone was stealing from my herd. That was absolutely unacceptable. You dare touch what's mine? I'll cut your hands off. I slammed my power through the connection and burned part of the thief's consciousness. The stone shattered, and Perry's soul snapped back into his body. Somewhere far away, a lich sealed underground in the demon realm shuddered. That was the soul thief. It had reacted fast enough to sever the connection before I could do worse. In my current weakened state, I couldn't chase it down. Frustrating, but at least Perry was safe. No one steals from my farm. After that excitement, I went back to counting days by scratching marks on the cave wall with my horn. Not because I needed to, my memory was perfect. I was just bored. Then I sensed the night fiend Lord Ulerin flying down to report. Watching that massive demon with its comically tiny wings flutter rapidly to stay airborne never stopped being ridiculous. Master, I've completed the census of all monsters in the lower 5 levels, as you ordered. He knelt and presented a thick stack of beast-hide papers. Good. Planning my underground city required knowing exactly what I was working with. The Night Fiend Yularen delivered a thorough census of all monsters in the lower 5 levels. Over 1,000 identifiable species, plus hundreds of new unnamed ones. I rewarded him with a dragon crystal, which I could produce easily at the cost of a little energy. For demons, dragon crystals had special benefits, and Yularen was particularly pleased because they helped him sleep better. He tucked it into a flesh pocket on his belly and left. The teleportation base was nearly finished. The goblins were building their end too. All 12 goblin leaders were now infected with my power, making the entire Guk tribe mine to control. I just needed to nudge them gently, and they'd carry out my wishes without even realizing it. The only missing piece was the blue magic ore from the night. I checked on my ground ice system, now upgraded to version 2.0 with all the first version's problems fixed. The only downside was slow growth. The roots had only reached the 11th floor so far. I was scanning different levels when I noticed the Pathfinder receptionist approaching with visitors. More customers, I figured. But then I looked closer. These people weren't wearing armor. They wore matching white robes. Not adventurers. Church investigators. I pulled out of the ground eye immediately and reinforced my illusion barriers. The group was led by a man named Baiken. They'd coordinated with the Adventurer Guild president and decided to come meet me directly. They'd already tried analyzing the panel through their own methods, but failed. The magic was either too complex or too high level for their tools. So they'd come in person, gambling on their status as Holy Light servants to keep them safe. When they entered my space, they saw what everyone saw, a starry void, a floating platform with a table, chairs, and tea sets. I greeted them warmly. Welcome, new guests. They looked around until they found my eyes floating in the darkness. Baiken introduced himself calmly. Church investigators, here to ask questions, hoping for cooperation. Holy Light followers, please sit down. It's been so long since I've seen Children of the Light. I've missed it. I laid on the friendliness thick. Meanwhile, my dragon body was screaming with instinctive rage and disgust at the holy energy radiating from them. But just like the Eldritch Whispers, these impulses had zero effect on my actual mind. Being a transmigrator had its perks. Bacon's eyebrows relaxed slightly. According to both his experience and church records, truly evil beings couldn't hide their hatred of holy light. My warm reception eased most of their suspicions, though not all. They planned to stay a long time, long enough that any evil entity pretending to tolerate holy light would eventually snap. They didn't realize I wasn't afraid of holy light itself. I was afraid of them scaring away my customers. Holy light was powerful, sure, but it couldn't destroy me. Otherwise, they would have killed the original dragon instead of just sealing it. They sat down stiffly, bags at their sides, posture rigid and proper. I poured everyone tea with my mind. I understand why you're here and what concerns you. Completely reasonable. Baiken glanced at his tea without touching it. Good, then let's skip the pleasantries. Can you tell us what exactly you are? We've heard some things from the adventurers, but we need more detail. Of course, I was fully prepared for this. I am an Earth Spirit, a consciousness born from a special region of land. Earth Spirit. I could tell from Bacon's expression he'd never heard of such a thing. That was the point, a made-up identity that couldn't be easily verified or disproven. Earth Spirit wasn't something I made up. They actually existed, at least in the Dragon's era. Whether any were still around in this age, I had no idea. That uncertainty worked in my favor. Baiken politely asked me to explain what an Earth Spirit was. I acted surprised that they didn't know, then suggested they check their old records. They'd probably find something. This bought me credibility while making it hard to disprove on the spot. I told them Earth Spirits are born under rare conditions, magically rich soil, battlefields soaked in resentment, that kind of thing. I gave them a thorough explanation that was entirely factual. One of the investigators, a woman, was scribbling notes at incredible speed, not just what I said, but her own analysis alongside it. I could see every word through my senses. Then came the big question. Why was the Eternal Night Forest so polluted that even heroes couldn't explore the depths? I blamed it on the remains of an ancient god buried here. The moment I said, ancient god, every investigator tensed up. Expected. Relax, I said gently. Ancient gods aren't inherently evil. Gods are embodiments of order. The holy light gods, sure, but even the gods of the murky sea, molten fire, and curses, none of them are truly wicked. They all fulfill their duties faithfully. What's frightening is only their authority, their domain of power. Under rational control, those powers are just rules. This was actually true based on the dragon's memories. Most gods weren't villains, even the ones with scary-sounding titles. They calmed down a bit, but stayed alert. Fair enough. Baikin asked which ancient god's remains were here. I said I didn't know. I'd been born here, spent my existence containing the god's leaking power, then got knocked unconscious during the god wars. While I slept, the power leaked out uncontrolled and created the eternal night forest as it existed today. The logic was airtight. They couldn't find a hole in it. We'll need to verify your claims. Standard procedure, Baikin said. Completely understand. I've dealt with holy light followers before. Happy to cooperate. Then we moved to the adventurer topic. He asked directly whether I'd used any manipulation, brainwashing, or deception to get adventurers to sign soul contracts. Absolutely not, I said firmly. Beings like me need souls, yes. But I don't operate like demons. No fraud, no tricks. Every transaction is fair and voluntary. He asked for a sample contract to take back for analysis. I gave them several, one per investigator. When Baikin said one would have been enough, I told them to keep the extras as souvenirs. Secretly, I figured if any Holy Light followers ever wanted to sign up themselves, having a contract already in hand would save time. After the formal questions ended, they stayed, and kept staying. They were testing whether I'd eventually snap from prolonged exposure to Holy Light energy. That was their real gambit. Sit in the presence of a holy entity long enough that any evil creature would lose its composure. We made small talk for what felt like forever. I asked about the current era. They told me about recent history. We ran out of topics completely. I could see them subtly shifting in their chairs, uncomfortable, but none moved until Baikin finally stood up. I genuinely respected them. They'd walked into the lair of an unknown being, betting their lives on a bluff, and held their nerve the whole time. Once they disappeared through the illusory door, I exhaled. That hurdle was cleared. As long as their investigation came back clean, which it would, my adventurer business was safe for a long time. On the 5th floor, the guild president Yuzuroan had been pacing anxiously at the tunnel entrance with his guards, waiting for the investigators to return. When they emerged unharmed, his relief was obvious. He shook Bacon's hand enthusiastically. They left together to discuss findings somewhere private. My Pathfinder receptionist, using the stealth ability I'd given it, watched from the shadows until they were gone, then came back to report. Everything was going according to plan. While I was handling the church investigation and growing my adventurer business, things were wrapping up with the goblins too. A scout from the Wind Lion Kingdom flew over the Guk tribe on his griffin and noticed something deeply unsettling. The goblins were quiet. Not the usual chaotic, screaming, hyperactive goblins. These moved like sleepwalkers. They did their work mechanically, without any of their typical energy or aggression. The scout was so creeped out he flew back immediately to report. He was right to be scared. I'd been slowly tightening my grip on every red goblin's mind. Their ambition, their aggression, their desire to fight and breed and create, all of it had been drained away. When I'd ordered them to release all their prisoners, the humans they'd been using as food and breeding slaves, not a single goblin questioned it. They just did it. Any flicker of doubt was instantly forgotten. The goblin leaders knew the truth. Even the old shaman and the great chieftain had figured out they'd been played. But they couldn't feel angry about it. I'd taken away even that. When the chieftain asked the shaman if they'd been tricked, the old goblin just sighed. Accept our fate. We have no choice. Do I look like I'm trying to resist? The chieftain laughed bitterly. There's nowhere to run. They stood in front of the half-finished teleportation array they'd built inside Anvil City, where their great wharf forge used to be. They'd dismantled it without complaint when the shaman said it was the master's will. Then the moment came. Rosalind had delivered the blue magic ore faster than I'd expected. She must have made progress on the brain thief case. The ore arrived through the sacrifice ritual I'd taught her, already refined and higher purity than I'd hoped. She'd done excellent work. I'd have to compliment her next time. I sent the ore to the goblins through our connection, and they immediately started smelting it into the right shapes for the teleportation array. On my end, the demon lords were building the matching array underground. Both sides finished in just 2 days. The array could transport about 200 beings at a time. I activated the connection and the transfers began. Batch after batch of red goblins materialized on the 13th underground floor. Regular workers came first, then managers, and finally the 12 leaders. The space was packed. Over 100,000 goblins crammed together, with my demon lords towering over the red crowd like mountains rising from a crimson sea. The old shaman looked around for me, but couldn't find me. He approached the nearest demon lord and asked humbly when he could meet the master. "The master has been watching you the whole time," the demon rumbled. "You'll see him soon enough." My underground city workforce had arrived. Construction could finally begin. The teleportation array ate up enormous amounts of magic power, but for me that was nothing. Once all the goblins were in position on the 13th floor, I summoned the 12 leaders down to my level. When they saw my true form, the massive sealed dragon in the magma, every one of them dropped to their knees instantly. It wasn't a choice. Their bodies moved on their own, driven by pure instinct in the face of overwhelming power. "Praise you, great master. The Guk tribe will be your most loyal servants," the old shaman cried with genuine fanaticism. The others followed, every bit as fervent. They'd felt the full weight of my presence, power vast as an ocean, and it made them feel infinitely small. First came terror, then the goblin instinct to worship strength kicked in. Following someone this powerful wasn't humiliating to them. It was an honor. "Listen up," I told them. "There's no more Guk tribe. You're now maintenance workers for the underground city. Your only mission is to build it. We won't let you down." They didn't know what an underground city was. They didn't know what maintenance workers meant. But they nodded because they had no other option. I told them to bring me their best architects. They were about to get very busy. Meanwhile, back in Sky Capital, things were happening that I'd only hear about later. The brain thief had gotten restless after just 3 days of lying low. His killing urge was burning too hot. He suited up with poisoned daggers, crossbow bolts, and magic bombs hidden under a big coat, then stepped into the void realm with his contracted void creature, a thing called a step void serpent, coiled around his neck. He was heading for the church to target Alina. What he didn't know was that Rosalind had been preparing. Using the spell and rune I'd given her, she'd brewed the detection potion, tracked down the void creature's signature, and set up an ambush. The moment the brain thief turned a corner inside the void realm, completely relaxed, guard down, a fist smashed into his face. His nose shattered. He flew backward, knocked clean out of the void and back into reality. Rosalind had entered the void realm using my spell and was waiting for him. He crashed to the ground surrounded by closing footsteps, law enforcement closing in. He smashed a pink smoke bomb to cover his escape and ran. Once you left the void realm, there was a cooldown before you could re-enter, so he had to survive in the real world until then. He was panicking. Someone had hit him inside the void. That shouldn't have been possible unless there was another void walker in this city, something his boss had assured him was impossible. He dodged through streets, shoving people aside, with officers in pursuit. Then he felt it, the familiar magic fluctuation of someone exiting the void right ahead of him. Rosalind appeared directly in his path and threw another punch. She wasn't in her knight armor today. No sword either. She dressed plainly to avoid scaring him off. If she'd had her blade, that first strike in the void would have ended it. "Brain thief, you're not getting away, you again?" They clashed. He dodged her fist and pulled a dagger from his coat, but she was faster and stronger. Before the blade was fully drawn, her long legs slammed into his stomach. He folded like a shrimp and flew backward again, dropping the dagger. He hit the pavement hard. Before he could get up, she charged in and stomped down at him. He rolled away just in time. Her foot cracked the stone road, leaving a boot-shaped crater with an explosion of sound. Cold sweat poured down his face. She was trying to kill him. No restraint whatsoever. "You think I'm some pushover?" he snarled. He wasn't actually weak. Against anyone other than Rosalind, he'd hold his own. He put his hands together, chanted, and formed a green arcane energy sphere between his palms. I wasn't there for any of this. but I pieced together what happened from Rosalind's account later. The brain thief made his move after just 3 days. He couldn't resist the killing urge. He slipped into the void realm with his step-void serpent around his neck, heading for the church to go after Alina. He never made it. Rosalind had been tracking his void creature with the detection potion I'd given her the recipe for. She knew exactly when and where he entered the void. Using the spell and rune I'd carved on her hand, she stepped into the void realm herself and waited around the corner. The moment he turned that corner, completely relaxed, not expecting a thing, she punched him square in the face, shattered his nose. The impact knocked him clean out of the void and back into reality, where law enforcement was already closing in. He threw smoke bombs and a magic plant potion that exploded into a forest of vines and trees, covering an entire plaza. He almost got away. Rosalind cursed herself for not bringing her sword. With it, she could have used wide-area holy light attacks to clear the plants instantly. Then the rune on her palm tingled. He'd re-entered the void. She followed without hesitation. In the void realm, those conjured plants were invisible, just transparent streets as far as the eye could see. She spotted him limping across rooftops, clutching his stomach. He spun around, horrified. "How are you everywhere?" He pulled out a masterwork crossbow, small, enchanted with speed and power runes, lethal enough to kill even a knight. He fired. The bolt was faster than Rosalind expected. She twisted, but it punched through her left shoulder. The pain nearly dropped her. She fell off the rooftop and out of the void. The brain thief relaxed, assuming she'd need a long recovery before re-entering. But my rune had no cooldown restrictions like normal void walking did. Seconds later, footsteps behind him again. He turned and saw her charging at him, shoulders still bleeding, face showing nothing but cold determination and a thin sheen of sweat. Impossible. How can you re-enter so fast? Real fear hit him now. Nothing about this fight made sense. How had she found him? Where was her void creature? Why could she enter the void so freely? She closed the gap in a burst of speed. He raised the crossbow point blank. She was waiting for exactly that. Her leg shot up in a perfect arc, kicking the weapon out of his hands. It flickered and fell out of the void. He looked up just in time to see her boot filling his entire field of vision. Her axe kick landed flush on his face. His already broken nose collapsed completely. Teeth flew. Eyes bulged. He crashed out of the void again, tumbling off the rooftop into the street in front of a bakery. Incredibly, he was still conscious. His trembling hand reached inside his coat for something. Rosalind dropped from above and stomped on his wrist. The bone cracked like a dry branch. His step-void serpent launched itself at her throat in a last desperate attack. She snatched it out of the air by the head and crushed it in her fist. No. The anguish in his voice was almost pitiful. She broke his other wrist for good measure. "I'll kill you. I'll kill you. Rosalind Lowell," he gurgled through blood and broken teeth. "Worry about yourself. The Holy Light's judgment has found you." The crowd erupted. People were cheering, crying with relief, shouting her name. The brain thief who'd terrorized the city was finally caught. Women who'd been afraid to walk alone were thanking her. Someone yelled that she was incredible. Rosalind stood there, bleeding from her shoulder, surrounded by praise and gratitude. She didn't know what to do with it at first. Then it hit her. This was exactly what she'd always wanted. To protect people. To bring justice. And she wouldn't have managed it without my help. I looked forward to reminding her about that, and my 3 tons of blue magic ore. After Rosalind caught the brain thief, the Princess Saint Ronilon showed up at the scene. She'd been at the church for a holy light ceremony and came to help, but arrived too late. She healed Rosalind's shoulder wound and congratulated her. When she asked how Rosalind had pulled it off, the knight hesitated. She couldn't exactly explain that she'd gotten help from a sealed demon dragon. The princess noticed her discomfort and gracefully dropped the subject. Rosalind held up her end of the deal. The blue magic ore arrived, and it was even better quality than I'd asked for. With that, both teleportation arrays, the one in the Goblin Fortress and the one underground, were completed and connected. The goblins started pouring in. Now my underground was a construction site. The goblins were loud, hammering, drilling, running machines. The noise traveled upward, and adventurers on the upper floors could hear it. When newcomers asked me about it during their soul contract meetings, I told them I was renovating the underground to make the adventuring experience more comfortable. They seemed excited about that. I'd also been working on something new for the panel system, achievement rewards. I designed it like a proper game. Hit certain milestones, get titles and equipment. The equipment was real, materialized through my magic, but delivered through the panel interface. Orna was the first to trigger one. After weeks of relentless grinding on the 5th floor, she finally hit level 46. Then a pop-up appeared on her panel. She'd killed 20 Seathead class monsters and earned the title Seathead Hunter, plus a full equipment set called the Fire Glory set. The title gave a 5% attack boost. She tested it immediately, punched a dead monster's corpse, and instantly noticed the extra force. At her level, she knew her own body perfectly. The difference was unmistakable. The equipment set included a cloak, bracers, and boots with fire-themed designs. Wearing the full set gave 10% fire immunity and a 10% speed boost. The gear appeared directly on her body over her existing clothes, completely weightless but physically real to the touch. She was thrilled. This was the addictive loop I designed. Kill monsters, level up, get cool rewards. Classic game design, and it worked exactly as intended. She even found a hide function for the equipment, making it invisible while keeping the stat bonuses active. She appreciated that thoughtful touch. Then a group of red goblins marched past her with construction machinery, collecting soil and plant samples. Through the soul contract, she instinctively understood who they were. The manager's workers, labeled maintenance crew. She found the name choice odd, but didn't question it further. Everything was coming together. The goblins were building, the adventurers were grinding and spreading the word, and my soul farm was growing steadily. The underground city was taking shape. I was incredibly busy, and doing the most boring job imaginable. Every single building material the goblins brought me needed to be individually enchanted and inscribed with runes. This would let me control the entire underground city and make the materials virtually indestructible as long as I was alive. I couldn't batch process them because each piece served a different purpose. Here I was, a world-destroying demon dragon, doing factory assembly line work. I wanted to cry. The goblins had surveyed every level and found tons of tunnels leading to the outside, mostly dug by burrowing worm monsters. Those tunnels were how most creatures had gotten in over the ages, but now they were a security problem. They all needed to be sealed with my reinforced materials. The bottom level was already renovated. It was the smallest, so the work went fast. All the mindless mutant creatures had been cleared out. The goblins worked safely on every level, protected by my special scent marking and the demon lord's standing guard. Their old territory still had active mines supplying materials through the teleportation array. The Windlion Kingdom was watching that area, but if they tried anything, I could handle it with minimal effort. But the real highlight? I got distracted watching the goblins build their alchemy mechs. These machines ran on a combination of mechanics and magic. The technology wasn't incredibly advanced, but magic solved all the engineering problems that would have been impossible with pure science. I picked up the principles just from watching. No man can resist giant robots. I couldn't. Inspiration hit me like a flood. Using materials the goblins set aside, I designed and built a 20-meter-tall humanoid mech based on anime and movies from my previous life. Sleek, modern, beautiful, nothing like the goblins' crude, brutish designs. Their master craftsmen saw it and were genuinely awestruck, not just flattering me. I named it Black Shark. I loaded it with everything. Magic-powered cannons on its back that could mount on the shoulders and blast through a young dragon's body. Retractable wrist blades enchanted to cut any known metal, and defensive arrays so overpowered that even an adult dragon couldn't break through them. Maybe overkill for a first prototype, but it was my new toy. Of course I was going to spoil it. When Black Shark moved for the first time, I felt like a kid getting his first action figure. I tested it in an open area, walking, running, jumping, punching, dodging. Everything worked smoothly. Then I needed a real opponent. I picked a Kemp beast on the 8th floor, a massive rat-like monster with launchable back spines and a terrible temper. These things were so aggressive that even my demon lords wanted to kill them all, but I'd kept some around for biodiversity. I walked Black Shark into the beast's territory. It was sleeping but woke instantly when I crossed its barrier. Red eyes locked onto me. It charged without hesitation, no sizing up, no caution. Pure rage, partly from its natural temperament, and partly from my corruption rotting its judgment. We collided with a heavy thud. Black Shark grabbed the beast's head as its feet carved 2 long trenches in the ground before stopping. I was thrilled. Piloting a giant mech against a kaiju monster, something I'd only ever fantasized about in my old life, and now it was real. Black Shark's right arm rose high. Iron Fist came crashing down. The impact rattled the Kemp beast's brain. That punch had serious power behind it. I was in the middle of fighting the Kemp beast with Black Shark, having the time of my life punching a giant monster with a giant robot, when a prayer reached my mind. The Night Lady was using the sacrifice ritual to contact me. She wanted to meet and say thanks. I almost told her to come back later, but I figured maintaining the relationship was more important than playtime. I stopped the fight, used my ground eye roots to cast a sleep spell on the Kemp beast, and entered the mental space. Rosalind looked completely different from last time. She was glowing, literally. Her holy light had returned even stronger than before, and she was practically radiating happiness. "This was all thanks to you," she said. "I couldn't have caught that madman without your help. You're welcome. Great deal for both of us, right? We should keep working together. I'm an excellent business partner." She actually introduced herself properly this time. Rosalind Lowell, hand on her chest, the formal way. That was new. We were making progress. Then she asked if I could make the void-walking spell and rune permanent. She was worried about encountering other void-walkers in the future. I had to explain that my method worked by tearing open the void barrier using my own power, and repeated use would corrupt her with my energy. Unless she wanted to abandon the holy light and become my follower. Absolutely not. Her eyes went cold instantly. I'd pushed too far. For a holy light believer, what I'd just suggested was basically demonic temptation. She was being incredibly restrained by not attacking me on the spot. I apologized quickly. Instead, I taught her how to summon and contract a void creature the proper way, no corruption involved. She accepted and asked what I wanted in return. "I'll save that favor for later," I said, "as long as it doesn't go against justice." Of course. She asked what I'd used the blue magicker for. I told her honestly, building things. No evil plans. She warned me that she hoped I'd be at least neutral, if not good, so we could be real friends. "I just want a quiet, peaceful life," I told her. And I meant it. Then she surprised me by bringing up a case. After the brain thief was captured, someone had snuck into his prison cell and turned him into a vegetable. Not dead, but brain dead. A corpse could still have its soul interrogated through magic, but an idiot's soul was also an idiot's soul. No useful information could be extracted. The stolen brains were never found at the killer's home. Someone was behind him, collecting brains for some kind of ritual. "Are you asking me to help solve a crime?" I asked, amused. "You're experienced and knowledgeable. Maybe you can give me some ideas." She wasn't even trying to hide the fact that she respected my abilities now. We'd come a long way from, "You're a scammer." I helped the knight with some theories about the brain collecting case, though there wasn't much to work with. We parted ways, me back to my underground city project, her back to her investigation. What happened next at the Phantom Dragon Forest, I only learned about later. A silver dragon named Lunctor, Amira's beloved, Uncle Lunctor, returned to White Rainbow Castle after weeks of fighting undead creatures pouring out of a bone field north of the forest. It was getting worse. Skeletal dragons had appeared, injuring several silver dragons. Nobody knew why the undead were suddenly multiplying. Lunctor had sent word asking for help, but for now the Silver Dragon clan was barely holding the line. He'd come back for 2 reasons: to check on Amira and to borrow the world book to research what was causing the undead surge. While chatting with the little girl, the experienced Silver Dragon quickly sensed something was off. Amira was hiding something. She tried to cover it up, but she was no match for centuries of wisdom. "Amira, are you keeping secrets from me?" I can't tell. I promised someone, not even me. The guilt was tearing her apart, but she held firm, until she accidentally let my name slip. "Cohen won't trick me." "Cohen? Who's Cohen?" She slapped her hands over her mouth and refused to say another word. Lunctor looked genuinely hurt, and that was what finally started breaking her resolve. She was caught between keeping her promise to me and not wanting to upset the uncle she loved. She was about to tell him everything. Then a maid walked in carrying a fruit tray, set it down, and silently approached from behind. Lunctor was exhausted from weeks of fighting and completely focused on Amira. He didn't notice. The maid pressed her hand against his back. Black lightning exploded across his body. The silver dragon collapsed, convulsing, screaming in agony. Some invisible force locked down all his power. He couldn't transform into dragon form either, not that he would have, with Amira standing right there. "Uncle Lungter," Amira screamed, reaching for him. "Run, Amira," he rasped. But the maid shoved Amira aside before the child could touch the black lightning. "Our target isn't you, little princess. Just stay put." Amira hit the ground hard and looked up at the maid in horror. She recognized her. It was Aunt Chris, one of the castle servants. "Aunt Chris, why are you doing this?" "I'm not your Aunt Chris." The woman's smile twisted grotesquely. She ripped off the skin on her face, revealing a pale, rotting, horrifying visage underneath. Lungter forced his head sideways and identified her immediately. "The cursed people, how knowledgeable, Mr. Lungter. You even recognize our nearly forgotten race." She stepped on the fallen silver dragon, confirming his guess. Amira's face was white as paper. Despite being terrified beyond anything she'd ever experienced, she still managed to ask in a trembling voice, "Where is the real Aunt Chris?" The fake maid patted her own belly and laughed. "Your dear Aunt Chris? I ate her a long time ago. She's dead. I only found out about all of this afterward, but it was the fire spirit I'd given Amira that ended up saving the day." The fake maid, a member of a race called the Cursed People, had been hiding inside White Rainbow Castle for who knows how long, disguised as a servant named Chris. She'd actually eaten the real Chris and taken her place. Her goal was to kidnap Lungter, the silver dragon, who had apparently been chosen as the next leader of his clan just months ago. The Cursed People somehow knew this secret. She'd hit Lungter with some kind of black lightning magic specifically designed to suppress dragons. A full-grown silver dragon, completely paralyzed with a single touch. That was serious power. The woman told Amira the truth about what she'd done to the real Aunt Chris, just to see the little girl's face crumble. These cursed people seemed to carry deep resentment toward anyone living a good life. Watching Amira's innocence shatter gave her satisfaction. Lungter yelled at Amira to run, but the fake maid swatted the girl away casually and hoisted the paralyzed dragon onto her shoulder. More disguised infiltrators appeared, other fake servants who'd been hiding in the castle. They had a teleportation gate hidden in the basement. That's when my gift came through. Amira, lying on the ground, raised her right hand. The rune I'd carved into her palm glowed, and the fire spirit Anseros emerged. The little round creature took one look at its master's distress, read her emotions through their link, and understood what needed to happen. Its cute white eyes turned red and V-shaped. Its body exploded in size, growing a massive mouth full of fangs, thick armored limbs, and spines across its back. It became something monstrous, something that hadn't existed in this world for ages, and tore after the kidnappers. Buildings melted on contact with its body. The Cursed People tried to stop it. Their black lightning attacks managed to slow it briefly, but the fire spirit roared once and blasted the lightning off. The shockwave of heat vaporized every infiltrator who tried to block its path. Instantly, gone. The leader, Walia, realized she couldn't escape while carrying Lungter. With the fire spirit closing in and the heat becoming unbearable, she screamed in rage and hurled the silver dragon away from her. The fire spirit's flames cooled instantly. It caught Lungter gently in its jaws, turned around, and carried him straight back to Amira. Mission complete. It wouldn't do anything beyond what its master wanted, and once Lungter was safe, protecting Amira was the priority. Walia was left standing there with a face twisted into something inhuman with fury. Months of planning, ruined by a fire spirit nobody had accounted for. She fled through the teleportation gate with her 2 remaining followers. The gate closed behind them. Back in the room, Amira saw Lungter brought back safely and threw herself onto him, sobbing uncontrollably. He still couldn't move his body, but he talked to her softly, comforting her as best he could. My little gift to a child had just saved a Silver Dragon clan's future leader. Not bad for a parting present. The aftermath at White Rainbow Castle was chaotic. Forest elf guards rushed in to secure Amira. Her singing teacher, an elf woman named Circe, the strongest fighter in the castle besides the Silver Dragon, had been ambushed by 3 infiltrators simultaneously. She killed all 3 but was badly wounded and passed out. When she came to, she was furious, demanding the Cursed People pay for their attack. Everyone agreed this was a direct provocation against both the Elf Kingdom and the Silver Dragon clan. Lungter warned that the attackers had clearly planned this carefully and they needed to act fast. Amira was traumatized. For the first time in her sheltered life, she'd witnessed real death. People she knew, people she cared about. That kind of experience leaves marks on a child. When Cersei asked about the fire spirit that had saved Lungter, the Silver Dragon surprised everyone. Instead of pressing Amira for answers about where it came from, he said they should respect the little princess's privacy and not pry into her secrets. Privately, he told Amira he was grateful to her mysterious friend and wouldn't force her to reveal anything. He had his reasons. Whoever gave Amira that fire spirit was clearly powerful and hadn't harmed her. Pushing too hard might provoke that unknown entity and put Amira at risk. Better to approach things gradually. Smart dragon. If I ever met him properly, I'd probably like him. Meanwhile, back underground, I had a frequent visitor. "Mr. Manager, I'm here again, Orna." Fourth visit now. She'd become a regular. My business had grown so much that I no longer handled contracts personally. I'd prepared stacks of pre-made contracts and assigned selected subordinates to process new customers. But Orna always insisted on being brought directly to me by the Pathfinder. Officially, she came to suggest new panel features. She was actually creative about it. Many of her ideas overlapped with what I'd already planned, though some were wildly impractical. I accepted the good ones, rejected the rest. But I suspected her real reason for visiting was the food. I'd been materializing snacks and dishes from my previous life's memories in the illusory meeting space, and she devoured them shamelessly every time. "Any new ideas today?" I asked. "Not here for ideas today." She sat down at the table like she owned the place, poured herself tea, and took a satisfied sip. "Just here for tea then, can I be?" I narrowed my illusory eyes at her. She waved her hand, laughing. "Kidding. I'm here to deliver a message from the Adventurer Guild president. Why didn't he come himself? He says he's too busy. I think he's just scared. Important people tend to fear death." She started stuffing her face with the snacks I'd prepared, talking with her mouth full. "What's the message? He wants to cooperate with you. Joint management of the underground city." The guild had been watching my renovations for a while and had coined the term underground city themselves. The president apparently saw its potential and wanted in. I wasn't opposed to partnership. I wasn't stubborn about controlling everything alone, and having the guild's cooperation would bring legitimacy, more adventurers, and more souls. As long as the terms were fair. Smart man, seeing the potential. "How does he want to cooperate?" He said to check your interest first. The details would need proper negotiations later. It's too big a project for a quick chat. She was chewing with her cheeks puffed out like a hamster. "Zero elegance. Could you at least pretend to have some manners? You are a lady, after all." Orna didn't care one bit about my comments on her manners. She kept eating until her belly was round, then finally agreed to leave and deliver my response to the guild president. Before she left, I asked if she could get me blue magic or I couldn't keep relying on Rosalind for everything. Orna's eyes lit up. She clearly had connections. She said she'd think about what she wanted in exchange and get back to me next time. Business was booming. So many adventurers were signing up now that I'd stopped handling contracts personally. I'd pre-made stacks of them and assigned subordinates to process customers. The underground construction had reached the 5th floor, and I'd had to block off work zones, which annoyed some adventurers. To compensate, I sent everyone with a panel a pair of quality boots through their inventory system, made from dead adventurers' boots that I'd lightly enchanted and had goblin leatherworkers polish up. Barely cost me anything, but for mid-level adventurers, these were dream-tier equipment. Some actually asked for more construction disruptions so they'd get more freebies. Adventurers without panels got nothing. They weren't my customers. That little move broke a lot of holdouts. Watching panel owners get free gear was too much. My soul farm expanded again. I could feel my power slowly recovering. Life was looking up. Then I realized something. Amira hadn't contacted me in a long time. I was actually worried. She had a divine weapon, sure, but I'd also genuinely grown fond of the kid. My power had recovered enough to reach out across the distance, so I sent a thread of consciousness along the connection to her artifact. I found her in her room at White Rainbow Castle, lying face down on her bed in a plain white dress, hugging the fire spirit, muttering to herself. "Anseros, I really want to go see Mr. Cohen, but I can't face him. I almost told on him. He'll definitely be angry. She rolled over and buried her face in the fire spirit's soft belly. If I apologize, will he forgive me? She hadn't noticed that behind her, on the nightstand, the little gray statue, my artifact, had flickered to life. Flames gathered silently on top, forming a miniature dragon head. Me. I saw her lying there with her bare feet wiggling in the air, pink and chubby. I felt mischievous. I floated over quietly. So did you actually tell anyone? I asked casually from above her. No, she answered automatically. Then froze. Her head shot up from the fire spirit's belly. Her big eyes blinked twice. She flipped over, looked up, and met my grinning dragon face hovering right above her. EK. She slapped both hands over her own mouth. I'd already put up a sound barrier around the room. I'd expected the scream. She peeked at the door, then back at me, eyes sparkling with excitement before quickly going guilty and looking down. Sounds like our little princess has something to confess. Better come clean, don't you think? I honestly didn't think she could have done anything that would hurt me. At worst, she'd almost spill my secret. But she was a child. I'd never expected perfect secrecy from her. The fact that she'd tried so hard to keep her promise was more than enough. Mr. Cohen, I'm sorry. I almost betrayed you. She pinched the hem of her skirt, voice barely a whisper. Almost betrayed me? So you didn't actually do it, I said, floating closer to Amira. Tell me what happened. Then I'll decide whether to forgive you. She told me everything. How Lungter had nearly gotten her to talk, how the attack happened, how she'd kept my secret even under pressure. At the end, she added in a tiny voice, Please scold me, Mr. Cohen. But I still want to be your friend. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make her nervous. Then I said, You did the right thing, Amira. Her head shot up, eyes misty with held-back tears, looking completely confused. Your Uncle Lungter is family. He's more important than a friend's secret. You made the correct choice, and I can't blame you for that. But, you're not angry? I broke my promise, maybe a tiny bit sad. But I understand how hard it was for you. So no, I don't blame you. She lunged forward and hugged my dragon head with both arms. I'd made myself small enough for a proper hug this time, formed from real condensed elements so she could actually feel me. She smelled like cotton candy, light, sweet, and clean. After she finally let go, I looked around her room and was genuinely impressed. Elven carved furniture, a gemstone-studded vanity, glowing fruit lamps, carpets that smelled like fresh grass. It was like a fairy tale bedroom come to life. She suddenly got embarrassed about her appearance. Messy hair, casual dress, not guest ready. I told her it was my fault for showing up unannounced, and that she looked fine no matter what. When she still seemed uncertain, I added, Look at me. I never wear clothes. She burst out laughing. You only have a head. How would you wear clothes? The shadow from the attack finally seemed to lift from her face. She grabbed one of my chin spikes and started giving me an enthusiastic tour of everything in her room. Her vanity, a hat from her teacher, gems her mother brought from the Crimson Sea. She was so excited to have a friend visiting for the first time that she wanted to explain the history of every single object. Then she pointed at a piece of light-colored fabric on the floor, started to introduce it, and froze. She grabbed it, balled it up behind her back, and said with a red face, That's, my underwear. Hee hee. Let's skip that one, I said, mouth twitching. I redirected things by nodding toward a book corner wedged behind her bed. Aren't you forgetting someone? She gasped, dove for it, and pulled out the World Book, dusty and neglected in the crack between the bed and the wall. She wiped it with the fabric still in her hand, apologizing profusely. Since I'd given her the fire spirit, she'd basically forgotten about the World Book entirely. I felt a little guilty about that. The World Book looks pretty different from what I remember, I said. And weaker too. The book opened on its own. Words appeared on the page. Who are you? Cohen. An elemental lord who's been sleeping for a very long time. I didn't mention being a demon dragon. I wanted to see what the current World Book knew about history. There are no more elemental lords in this era. Your authority no longer exists, the book wrote back. That stopped me cold. No elemental lords at all. Elemental lords weren't just powerful beings who controlled elements. They served as anchors that kept the world's elements stable. Without them, elements could go haywire. Water element riots would cause endless tsunamis, uncontrollable tides, and permanent storms. Fire, earth, wind, each one going rogue would be catastrophic. If there are no elemental lords, Aren't the elements constantly on the verge of rioting? I asked, genuinely alarmed. This was bigger than my personal problems. If the elemental anchoring system had completely collapsed, this world was sitting on a ticking bomb. I told Amira she'd made the right choice, and I meant it. She cried a little, hugged my dragon head, and then everything was fine between us. Kids bounce back fast. She gave me a tour of her room. Fairy tale quality stuff, elven furniture, gemstone vanity, glowing fruit lamps. Then she accidentally pointed at her underwear on the floor, turned red, and stuffed it behind her back. I quickly changed the subject. I nudged her toward the world book, which she'd apparently kicked under her bed and forgotten about since getting the fire spirit. She pulled it out guiltily and wiped it off. The book opened and asked who I was. I told it I was Kuin, a long-sleeping elemental lord. I didn't mention the demon dragon part. I wanted to see what it knew. Its response shook me. There are no more elemental lords. Your authority no longer exists. No elemental lords at all. That was alarming. Elemental lords weren't just powerful dragons. They served as anchors keeping the world's elements stable. Without them, elements could riot. Endless tsunamis, uncontrollable fires, permanent storms. Catastrophic stuff. The book explained that the gods had reclaimed the elemental lord's authority and converted it into 12 elemental stakes, planted across the continent to keep things stable. Dead objects instead of living dragons. More reliable, I supposed, but it meant dragons had been significantly weakened as a race. When the book asked what my intentions were with Amira, the little girl jumped in to defend me before I could answer. She told the book about the fire spirit saving Luncter. The book went quiet, then wrote one final line. I hope you're telling the truth, and shut itself. Amira asked if the book was angry. I told her it was just shy, intimidated by my magnificence. She actually believed me. The closed book was probably rolling its metaphorical eyes. I asked Amira to take me outside. This was my first time actually seeing the real world through my own eyes, not through Purple Wing's memories or the ground eye. I breathed in the air, felt the sunlight, sensed the magic flowing through everything. After being trapped underground for so long, even sharing the dragon's ancient memories of imprisonment, this felt incredible. 2 elf guards followed us. They couldn't see me. I'd placed them under a subtle illusion, but they noticed Amira seemed to be talking to empty air. Not a great sign from their perspective, but they kept quiet for now. I did catch one of them whispering to a patrol guard as we passed. Someone was going to report this. As we walked through the castle, Amira's mood suddenly dropped. She saw damaged walls from the attack, and the faces of the dead servants flooded back. She slowed down, her eyes going dark. She was too young for this kind of grief, and too empathetic to just forget. They're in the divine kingdom now, I told her. They're at peace, enjoying everything beautiful. Is there really a divine kingdom? Of course. I actually had no idea, but it seemed to help. Then I brought up what I'd really come for. Didn't you tell me about the Phantom Star Radiance? Where is it? Take me to see it. She wiped her eyes, got her bearings, and pointed down a corridor. This way? Follow me. Amira led me through corridor after corridor, down a staircase, and into an underground room filled with magical instruments glowing night blue. All these devices existed for one purpose: to feed energy into the Phantom Star Radiance sitting in the center. There it was. Even damaged, it was stunning. But compared to the dragon's memories, it looked rough, especially the 3 holes punched violently through its surface. Someone had clearly tried to force their way in. Was my stolen authority still inside? I was about to find out. Let's go in together, Mr. Cohen. It's amazing inside. Whatever you imagine becomes real. I already built your amusement park in there. I muted the elf guard's hearing again so they wouldn't catch the activation spell. Amira opened the Phantom Star Radiance without hesitation. The shell plates lifted, a swirling portal formed, and we stepped through. Inside was an endless green meadow scattered with a child's creations, castles made of candy, giant stuffed dolls, abstract paintings. Amira proudly showed me her recreation of my amusement park. It was rough. Her memory could only capture the general shapes, but I praised her enthusiastically anyway. My real attention was elsewhere. I was scanning for my authority signature. It was faint, incredibly faint, but it was there. The problem was that I'd come as just a projected consciousness through the artifact. My sensing abilities were severely limited. Amira dragged me around the park, writing everything twice. I was basically on autopilot while my mind searched deeper. Finally, I broke through the illusion layer and saw the phantom star radiance's true internal structure. It was incomprehensibly vast and complex. And buried within all that complexity, I found my authority, sealed under multiple layers. Good news. The main body of my authority was still intact. Bad news. It wasn't complete anymore. Someone had figured out a clever workaround to tap into parts of it without fully extracting it. Whoever designed that method was genuinely brilliant, not someone to underestimate. But the core was still mine. That was what mattered. I pulled my senses back. My elemental body was finishing a second round on the roller coaster with Amira. I'd been here too long. Maintaining this projection across such a distance was draining, even with the artifact as a bridge. I told Amira I needed to leave. She pouted, predictably, but I just promised to visit again and withdrew my consciousness. When she stepped out of the Phantom Star Radiance, her Uncle Lungter was waiting outside in his elf form, smiling gently. He'd been tipped off by the guards that Amira was acting strangely, talking to air. He asked if she was okay. She got a bit nervous, but told him she was just bored and went for a walk. I'd already noticed Lungter waiting outside while I was still inside the Phantom Star Radiance. His silver dragon aura was unmistakable. I deliberately ended my visit early because of him. My illusions wouldn't work on an adult silver dragon, and if he saw my real dragon form, he'd almost certainly assume I was something evil. Better to avoid that encounter entirely. Back in my sealed prison, I stretched my massive body slightly and immediately regretted it. One of the chains dug into my side. Ow. Can't even stretch without these stupid things cutting into me. I carefully settled back into position. Overall, it had been a productive trip. Amira was safe. My authority was still inside the Phantom Star Radiance. All good news. Then a red goblin wearing a mining helmet came scrambling down to the bottom level, shrieking in its high-pitched voice, "Master!" We broke into a hell rift. My eyes lit up. On the 5th floor, the goblins had been renovating a chimera's den when they found a huge deposit of red blood ore underneath, almost as valuable as blue magic ore. They started mining it and accidentally cracked open a fissure leading straight to the demon realm. That meant demons could come pouring through at any moment. But instead of panic, I felt excitement. A direct connection to the demon realm? That was an opportunity. The Hell Rift was exciting news. Most people would panic at a crack leading straight to the demon realm, but I saw opportunity everywhere. Hell was the opposite of the divine kingdom. Complex, dangerous, and full of resources. The demon realm was basically Hell's surface layer, where it bled into reality. Legend said Hell was the graveyard of gods. The original dragon had actually been born in Hell's depths, drawn to a dead ancient god's remains by some mysterious will, and transformed through agonizing corruption into the world-destroying monster he became. I'd always been curious about that dead god, but after so many ages, there was no way to investigate. For my purposes, the rift meant two things: an endless supply of demons to use as labor or monster fodder for adventurers, and access to rare resources for my goblins to mine. As adventurers got stronger through the panel system, they'd kill monsters faster. If the monster population couldn't keep up, my whole underground city business model would collapse. The rift solved that problem. I sent my consciousness through the ground eye to the 5th floor. The rift was in a large cave made of dark rock. The goblins had already started building walls around it for a future boss room. The chimera that lived there was sleeping peacefully at the entrance. My demon lord, Quake Lavaroar, stood guard in the middle while red goblins clustered around the rift. The crack was about 5 meters long and 1 meter wide at its widest point. Disappointingly small. That meant larger demons, like Quake himself, couldn't pass through. Hell rifts were special. They only recognized a being's true soul size, not physical form. No shrinking magic could cheat it. I ordered Quake to report. He snapped to attention, shouted, "Yes, sir," then said nothing. I had to ask again. His report was essentially, "We found a rift. I sent a goblin to tell you. Then you came. Did any demons come through?" "No." Riveting intelligence work. Just then, the rift crackled with magical energy, and a furry head poked through. A male face, handsome-ish, black hair, red eyes. His body followed. Human upper half, serpent-like lower half wrapped in fleshy wings, with a scaled tail. Some kind of dragon-blooded demon species I didn't recognize. Must have evolved while I was asleep. I told Quake to hide underground. I wanted to see how this played out before showing my hand. The demon, calling himself Eurigino, spread his wings dramatically and announced to the kneeling goblins that he was great and they should feel honored to become his food. The goblins stayed face down on the ground, not because they were scared, but because I'd told them not to move. The idiot thought they were bowing to him. He laughed, swooped down, grabbed the biggest goblin, and swallowed it whole through a fanged mouth that split open across his chest and stomach. "This goblin is pretty tough," he muttered, patting his bulging belly. His chest teeth couldn't even chew through the red goblin's enhanced body. He looked down at the remaining goblins. None of them had moved or reacted to their companion being eaten. He started wondering if they were all brain dead. Then the rift crackled again. Another demon of the same species emerged, female this time. She fired a beam of energy at Eurigino before she'd even fully climbed out. "Eurigino, you're trying to hog all the food again." More guests were arriving. I watched with growing interest. These demons were weak enough to manage, but numerous enough to be useful. If a whole colony of them lived on the other side of this rift, I'd just hit the jackpot. The female demon, Nada, was way bigger than her brother Eurigino, twice his size, with thick limbs that looked more masculine than his. She bullied him immediately, calling herself Big Sister and demanding he wait his turn to eat. He'd been all high and mighty with the goblins, but one sharp word from his sister and he went completely silent. Nada eyed the sleeping chimera hungrily, circling around it, drooling. I actually held off giving the order to capture them because I was genuinely curious. Could she eat something that much bigger than her? The chimera was over 20 meters long with 8 heads. Nada was maybe 10 meters including her tail. She stared at it for a long time, then sighed. "Too big. Can't fit it." I was so disappointed. I'd been waiting for some kind of spectacular swallowing scene and got nothing. "Fine. Time to end this." I gave Quake Lavara the order. The massive demon lord rose up from the ground right behind the 2 dragon serpent demons. His aura hit them like a wall. Both siblings instantly flattened themselves against the floor in the most submissive pose possible. They'd been facing the rift, expecting the powerful presence to come from hell. "Wrong direction. You have trespassed on my master's territory, lowly dragon serpent demons," Quake rumbled. They spun around and prostrated themselves again. "Forgive us, great demon lord. Please let us leave." "Wrong answer. This is my master's territory, not mine." Their minds nearly broke. A demon this powerful was just a servant? What kind of being was behind him? They started wondering if a new demon king had somehow appeared, but the last one had only died 100 years ago. That shouldn't be possible, and doing it in the mortal realm with heroes around was suicidal. I spoke through the ground eyes root vibrations, using the demon language, unchanged for tens of thousands of years, hard-coded into demon genetics. "Tell me about yourselves." Both started talking at once. I told the sister to speak and the brother to shut up. Nada was secretly pleased about that. She explained they were from the Boiling clan of the Dragon Serpent tribe. They'd been chasing a rival group called the Soulcat Demons and stumbled onto this rift by accident. I asked what was on the other side. She described a gray bamboo forest, territory of gray-skinned horned demons. She didn't know about mineral resources, but I did. Gray bamboo forest terrain was rare and valuable in hell. The key resource was gray-quality raw crystal, an excellent magic-conducting material, hard as ice iron, perfect for rune carving and weapon forging. I mapped out a development plan in my head within seconds. When I asked about their tribal conflict, she ranted about the damned Soulcat demons being thieves, another demon species I didn't recognize. The underground had really diversified while I was asleep. I cut the small talk short. "You have one option. Become my servants. It would be our greatest honor." Nada threw herself down with fanatical enthusiasm before I'd even finished speaking. I blinked. That was fast. But not surprising. Lower-ranking demons were genetically wired to submit to superior beings. It was pure instinct. The higher-level demons like my Lord-class servants had outgrown that reflex and only responded to raw force. But these two? They'd follow anyone stronger without a second thought. 2 new servants, a hellside resource zone to exploit, and a steady pipeline of demon cannon fodder for my adventurers. This little rift was turning out to be one of my best discoveries yet. I assigned a goblin foreman named Chaddock to take 20 skilled goblins through the rift to scout the other side, with the 2 dragon serpent demons as guides. Before they left, there was a funny moment. Eurygeno was still clutching his stomach in pain. The red goblin he'd swallowed was sitting inside him completely unharmed. His sister Nada told him to just spit it out since he couldn't digest it. He stubbornly refused at first. Anything in my stomach is mine. But she reminded him the goblins belonged to their new master now. He finally coughed up the goblin, who crawled out, yawned, stretched, casually wiped off some stomach acid, and walked back to his group like nothing happened. Eurygenos' face was priceless. He suddenly realized he'd been threatening a bunch of creatures that could each beat him senseless. Nada laughed at him mercilessly. Despite their bickering, both demons did their job. They led the goblins through the rift into hell. The environment there would normally be lethal for mortals, but my red goblins were already half-demon at this point. They adapted naturally. Some even seemed excited, sniffing the sulfur air like they were coming home. The gray bamboo forest was exactly as I'd expected, towering gray stone pillars that looked like bamboo, made of an incredibly hard rock called graybone stone. Visibility was poor, with pale fog swallowing everything past a dozen steps. The whole place felt desolate and oppressive. The goblins couldn't have cared less. They immediately started yelling about building an outpost and bringing in their mining machines. I told them to scout first and only expand if things were safe. According to the dragon-serpent siblings, nothing in the nearby area could threaten my enhanced red goblins. Unless some wandering superdemon happened to pass through, but that was just bad luck territory. Meanwhile, on the surface, a new group arrived at the Eternal Night Forest, 7 Beastman brothers led by one named Monty. They were adventurers from a Beastman nation who'd been pushed out due to impure bloodlines and internal politics. They'd burned through every connection and all their savings just to get citizenship in a human kingdom so they could register with the Human Adventurer Guild. They'd done well for a while, climbing the ranks and paying off debts. Then a dark mage attacked their region, destroying the area they worked in. When they tried relocating, local adventurers at every new location conspired to freeze them out, filling all available guild slots to block competition. Same old discrimination, just wearing a different face. Their last option was the Eternal Night Forest, the legendary adventurer paradise where monsters were so plentiful nobody could monopolize the work. After one final rejection elsewhere, they made the journey. Walking into the massive guild station, all 7 brothers were fired up. Monty grinned and said he had a feeling they'd make their name here. Then they noticed something strange. Dozens of adventurers walking around with glowing rectangular panels floating in front of their faces, tapping at them casually. The Beastmen had never seen anything like it. Their confident swagger shrunk a little as they suddenly felt like country bumpkins who'd wandered into a big city. I wasn't directly involved in what happened next on the surface, but I'd hear about it soon enough through my network. 7 Beastman brothers showed up at the Eternal Night Forest. Their leader was named Monty, big guy with silver rings on his tusks. They'd had a rough time. Born with impure bloodlines in their Beastman nation, they'd been pushed out by internal politics and discrimination. They'd burned through every favor and every coin they had just to get human citizenship so they could register as adventurers in a human guild. Things went well for a while. They were genuinely skilled and started paying off debts. Then a dark mage destroyed the area they worked in. When they tried relocating, local adventurers at every new place conspired to lock them out by filling all the guild slots. Same old story, different kingdom. The Eternal Night Forest was their last shot. The moment they walked into the guild station, they noticed something strange. Dozens of adventurers walking around with glowing panels floating in front of their faces. They had no idea what they were looking at. The front desk lady was too busy to explain properly. Just said something about a panel, a manager, renting your soul, and a dungeon city. The Beastmen understood none of it. They tried following 2 adventurers and eavesdropping. The pair were chatting about leveling up, experience points, and hunting monsters, all panel stuff. When one of them noticed 7 massive beastmen craning their necks to peek at his screen, he freaked out and told them to buzz off. The bald one, Grillu, nearly started a fight over what he perceived as anti-beastman discrimination. Monty calmed him down by threatening to make him count numbers. Apparently Grillu's greatest fear was math beyond double digits. Just as Monty was looking for someone friendlier to ask, a small red-haired human girl appeared behind them. She was dressed like a female adventurer, knee-length dress, leather boots, potion straps on her thighs, arm guards. She said her name was Hattie, a Firefly rank adventurer, and offered to be their guide. She stuck out her palm for payment. Monty handed her a silver coin. She snatched it and said, "You guys clearly don't have much money, so I'll give you a discount this time." She took them to a tavern, ordered food on their tab, and began a thorough briefing. The forest's history, surface monster distribution, underground creature types, essential equipment, how to cash in rewards. It was far more detailed than anything the brothers had researched beforehand. And they still hadn't gotten to the main topic, the mysterious panel that everyone seemed to have. That alone was worth way more than one silver coin. After Hattie finished explaining the basics of the Eternal Night Forest, she moved on to the main topic, the panel, the manager, soul renting, everything. She was remarkably thorough for someone her age, covering the guild's stance, adventurer speculation about risks, and even tips about local scammers. Monty, the Beastman leader, recognized he'd found a valuable contact and agreed to be friends. Hattie immediately leveraged that friendship. She'd been eyeing a Deadwood treant she couldn't solo and wanted the Beastman's muscle. She was completely upfront about it, which the Beastmen actually respected. Straight talk was their style. When Monty asked to see her panel, she showed them. Level 7, impressive by current standards, since most adventurers were still around level 4 or 5. The Beastmen crowded around, eyes practically on fire when they heard that killing monsters directly made you stronger. Then, right as she was about to close the panel, a notification popped up. That was me. I'd been working on a major update and had just pushed it live across every panel simultaneously. The update had 4 new features. First, cosmetic panel skins that users could buy with experience. Second, a full-body 3D preview showing the user's current appearance. Hattie saw a tiny version of herself standing in a box on her panel, matching her outfit and pose exactly. Third, a friends list for direct communication and item sharing between users. And fourth, the big one, an experience shop. The shop let users spend earned experience to buy equipment, skills, magic spells, knowledge, food, minerals, even money. I'd stocked it with things that were genuinely hard to find on the open market. Dragon crystals, magical knowledge, rare materials. Items adventurers couldn't buy at any price through normal channels. Across the entire Eternal Night Forest, every panel user stopped what they were doing at the same moment to read the update notice. Most didn't fully understand the gaming terminology. They'd never seen updates or shops before, but once they started exploring the features and saw what was available in the shop, the reaction was explosive. Hattie slammed the table and jumped to her feet. Long live the manager! The entire tavern erupted in cheers. The Beastmen had no idea what was happening, but whatever it was, every adventurer in the building seemed overjoyed. Some of the sharper minds were already calculating, buy rare items from the shop with experience, then resell them at premium prices elsewhere. The economic possibilities were enormous, and every transaction in that shop cost experience points. Experience that came from souls I was farming. The more they spent, the more they'd need to grind, the longer they'd stay, and the more energy their souls would feed me. A perfect cycle. Game design at its finest. Hattie explained the panel update to the Beastmen, and once they understood, especially the experience shop, they practically exploded with excitement. The bald one, Grillu, jumped up demanding a panel immediately. Even the usually calm Monty admitted he couldn't stay composed. Hattie agreed to personally guide them down to sign up, even though she was dying to go shopping in the new store herself. The update was a massive hit. Within half a day, adventurers had bought out almost everything in the experience shop except items that were too expensive for current levels or things I could restock infinitely, like dragon crystals. This was exactly what I'd planned. The experience I gave adventurers was actually tiny fragments of my own power. Even if every single one of them hit max level, the total cost would barely scratch my reserves. But I needed to slow down their leveling pace. If everyone kept grinding unchecked, high-level adventurers would eventually flood the system, killing their own motivation and disrupting the dungeon's balance. Putting a hard cap on leveling would have been clumsy. Instead, giving them exciting ways to spend experience was elegant. They'd willingly slow their own progress while feeling great about it. Classic game design from my previous career. Shortly after, the guild president User Rowan finally came to meet me in person.